Chapter 888. Zhou Tanhua and Xian Xianghua returned to the Emperor's Sword Divine Range to explain. In less than 3 days he left with Shen Yanxing. The range master of the Emperor's Sword Divine Range was Xian Xianghua. After all, Zhou Shaoxian was too impatient and Xiao Jinghong's cultivation wasn't high enough. It was difficult for him to support the majesty of the Emperor's Sword Divine Range. Zhou Xuanji sent them off. They came to the dark realm outside the Origin Court. Zhou Tanhua looked back at his father and said with a smile, "Father, don't worry. When I come back, I will definitely become your right-hand man and strengthen the Kunlun Origin Court with you." He smiled confidently. There was no sadness of parting at all. In fact, he felt very sad in his heart. But in order not to drag Zhou Xuanji down, he felt that he had to act free and easy. Zhou Xuanji rubbed his head and said with a smile, "Then we have an agreement. You have to come back. Don't go away and never return." Looking at him, Zhou Xuanji inexplicably thought of himself. He used to be like Zhou Tanhua. Now he was a sovereign, but he still couldn't cover the sky with one hand and protect his family. This made his heart a little heavy. Shen Yanxing, who was next to him, looked at the father and son. Her emotions were surging. She suddenly remembered the scene in the passageway between the two worlds. She looked at Zhou Xuanji with a complicated look in her eyes. After exhorting a few words, Zhou Xuanji let them set off. "Don't worry, I won't let him die." Shen Yanxing couldn't help but let out a cold snort when she saw Zhou Xuanji looking at Zhou Tanhua. She was a tyrannical existence who had hunted many great sovereigns. How could she be so weak and untrustworthy? Zhou Xuanji nodded before watching Shen Yanxing and Zhou Tanhua leave. Only after they disappeared into the darkness did he slowly retract his gaze. "If I find out who you are, I will make you regret it." Zhou Xuanji's eyes were cold as he muttered to himself. Mumbled to himself. After that, he turned around and returned to the Kunlun Origin Court. Zhou Tanhua's departure didn't change anything. The Kunlun Origin Court was still the same. Zhou Xuanji also began to work hard on cultivating. With the 12 law ancestors and the god pillars, the order of the Kunlun Origin Court was restored. The various origin cities became lively again. Due to the prohibition of war, many living beings in the Kunlun universe came and went in an endless stream. The entire Kunlun Origin Court seemed to be flourishing with each passing day. The interactions between the divine ranges had also increased. If they couldn't start a war, they would hold a tournament to hone their combat abilities. The Origin Court turned a blind eye to this. Zhou Xuanji came out of closed-door cultivation and discovered this, and he did not know whether to laugh or cry. He sent a message to the 12 ancestors, telling everyone that they could fight, but they couldn't carry out a divine range war. Completely curbing the slaughter would only produce the opposite of the desired result. As long as it did not affect the divine ranges, Zhou Xuanji had no objections. Some people needed to fight to become stronger, while others needed to take revenge. These emotions could not be suppressed. Time flew by. Zhou Xuanji welcomed his 3000th birthday. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached 3000 years old. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner has obtained Myriad Flower Origin Court, 1000 Worlds Banishing Hegemon Sword, Outer Soul Doppelganger. The sword spirit's voice sounded out in Zhou Xuanji's mind. He opened his eyes, which flashed with a purple light. The Myriad Flowers Origin Court that surpassed the Origin Court Reversal Divine Sword. Zhou Xuanji had a feeling. Currently, he was not qualified to use the Thousand Realms Chaotic Executioner Sword. Soon, the sword's information appeared before his eyes. Sword name, Thousand Realms Hegemon Slayer Sword Grade, Myriad Flower Origin Court Description. A peerless overlord sword formed by the fusion of 1000 planes. It contains a horrifying power that can destroy everything. To use this sword, one must have at least the cultivation of the great sovereign of the 5 courts. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. What did 1000 planes refer to? Only the cultivation of the great sovereign of the 5 courts could use it. This showed how domineering this sword was. After that, he continued to inherit the Outer Soul Doppelganger. A stream of memories flowed into his mind, allowing him to quickly master this divine ability. The Outer Soul Doppelganger divine ability used soul telekinesis to manifest the doppelganger. The doppelganger's aura was exactly the same as the original body, making it difficult to distinguish the real from the fake. The strength of the original body was related to the amount of soul telekinesis consumed. The greatest advantage of this divine ability was that it was difficult to distinguish the real from the fake. Zhou Xuanji smiled satisfactorily. Not bad. Although he only received 1 legendary sword for his birthday, it was still a huge gain for him. He got up and walked out of the Supreme Palace. On the cliff, Jiang Shui had already prepared a table of dishes and wine, waiting for him. Seeing him walking over, Jiang Shui got up and said with a gentle smile, "Xuanji, congratulations on reaching 3,000 years old." 3,000 years old. For mortals this was such a long time. But in the Kunlun origin court, Zhou Xuanji was still not old enough to travel alone. Not only was Jiang Shui congratulating Zhou Xuanji, but the 12 ancestors were also busy. The entire Kunlun origin court congratulated Zhou Xuanji together. When everyone learned that Zhou Xuanji was only 3,000 years old, they were all dumbfounded. They knew that Zhou Xuanji was very young, but they didn't know his exact age. Now that they heard about it, they were all stunned. For a moment, Zhou Xuanji was praised as the most powerful genius in history. "Congratulations to you too, you are already 3,004 years old," Zhou Xuanji said with a soft smile. Zhou Xuanji said with a soft laugh. He walked to Jiang Shui's side, held her hand and sat on the bench. Jiang Shui poured wine for him. The two talked about the past while facing the majestic immortal mist. Since Zhou Tanhua left, Zhou Xuanji and Jiang Shui spent most of their time in closed-door cultivation. Under his guidance, Jiang Shui had already reached the Origin Fusion Divine Lord Stage 1. Although Zhou Xuanji's supreme divine power had been growing steadily, it was difficult for it to make a qualitative leap. According to Little Sovereign, if he wanted to break through to the Great Sovereign of the Second Court, he had to master another court. In other words, he had to leave the Kunlun Origin Court. However, the owner of the Universe Kill Order hadn't arrived yet. He couldn't leave. The two talked about the past for a while. Then the topic fell on their children. "I wonder how Tanhua is now. He hasn't replied after leaving for so long," Jiang Shui said worriedly. She was most worried about Zhou Tanhua. As for Zhou Shaoxian, she was very safe in the Emperor's Sword Divine range. Zhou Xuanji swirled the wine glass and calmly said, "He's fine. I have a hunch that he will surprise us the next time he comes back." Jiang Shui nodded and said with a smile, "Just like you. Every time you disappear and come back you will surprise everyone." Zhou Xuanji smiled proudly. Like father, like son. The more powerful Zhou Tanhua was, the more face he would have as a father. "Sword Emperor, can you come out for a gathering?" At this moment, Su Aoshua's voice suddenly came. Zhou Xuanji put down his wine glass. He softly said, "I will go out for a while. Wait for me here." Having said this, he directly left the Kunlun Origin Court without waiting for Jiang Shui's response. In the dark domain, Su Aoshue, Qilin Demon, Zhou Fa and Beast Sovereign were waiting. As soon as Zhou Xuanji appeared, the four's gazes quickly fell on him. The Qilin Demon looked at Zhou Xuanji with an evil smile on his face. He looked like a poisonous scorpion making people shudder. "Sword Emperor, long time no see. How have you been?" Su Aoshue cupped his fists and said with a smile. He had an amiable look on his face. He was secretly surprised. "How long has it been? This kid's aura has become stronger again." Chapter 889. Not bad. "May I know why Senior Su is here?" Zhou Xuanji asked as he bowed. He could not help but glance at the Qilin Mei. He could sense that this woman was very dangerous. She tried her best to suppress her murderous intent, but Zhou Xuanji could still sense it. This woman came with ill intentions. Su Aoshue immediately introduced the Qilin charm to Zhou Xuanji. After hearing that the Qilin charm was one of the Qilin 9 absolutes, Zhou Xuanji's eyes narrowed. The universe killing order was created by the Qilin 9 absolutes. Zhou Xuanji was immediately filled with murderous intent. "Sword Monarch, can I see your son?" The Qilin enchantress covered her mouth and smiled. Her demonic tone and expression seemed to have a deeper meaning. "No." Zhou Xuanji shook his head. The imperial sword of life and death and the soul Kunlun sword appeared behind him. His gaze turned sharp. He wanted to fight. Zhou Fa and Beast Sovereign were secretly shocked, especially Beast Sovereign. In his eyes, Zhou Xuanji didn't seem to be any weaker than Su Aoshue. "How long has it been?" Beast Sovereign thought bitterly. Zhou Xuanji is growing too fast. Previously, when he heard Zhou Fa's words, he felt that it was unreal. Now that he had seen it with his own eyes, he was shaken to the core. His emotions were complicated, and he even wanted to find a hole to hide in. The more powerful Zhou Xuanji was, the more he would lose face. The Qilin demon laughed out loud. She laughed beautifully, as if she had heard a very funny joke. Su Aoshue frowned and transmitted his voice to Zhou Xuanji. "The Qilin 9 absolutes are very powerful in the endless universe. Too many great sovereigns have died in their hands. Don't act recklessly." In his opinion, it was just a son. If he died, he could just have another one. It was not worth it to sacrifice his own life for this. Zhou Xuanji looked at the Qilin demon calmly without any fear. As for Su Aoshue, he did not have a good impression of him. This matter had nothing to do with Su Aoshue. If he wasn't here to lead the way, was he here to be a mediator? In his heart, Su Aoshue was already his enemy. The Qilin charm's expression also calmed down. She no longer had a smile on her face as she said coldly, "If you are unwilling, the consequences will be unimaginable." Kunlun Origin Court? So what? The 9 Absolutes Qilin were not afraid. You all acted for money and serendipity. If I pay a higher price to buy you all to kill your original employer, will that work? Zhou Xuanji asked. The Qilin enchantress shook her head and said, "We are selling the Universe Kill Medallion. We only sell it and don't take it back. If you want to take revenge, you can also buy the Universe Kill Medallion and let us kill that guy." It was really not a loss to sell and buy. The murderous intent in Zhou Xuanji's heart grew stronger. He was thinking about whether he should act directly. Qilin Mei was a little impatient and said, "Sword Emperor, since you can become a sovereign, you should be a smart person. Adapting to circumstances is the greatest ability to survive. Otherwise, no matter how talented you are, you will still die. To you, the Qilin 9 Absolutes is a power that transcends dimensions. We will not destroy the Kunlun Origin Court because of its past, but what about you? Even Wu Zhou has to avoid me." Su Aoshue nodded. He looked so cowardly in Zhou Xuanji's eyes. Back at the banquet, Zhou Xuanji felt that Su Aoshue was unfathomable and had a deep understanding of the Tao. Now it seemed that he had misjudged him. No matter how high one's cultivation was, without backbone, what kind of expert was he? It's useless to say more. Zhou Xuanji directly used the sword fusion technique. Except for the Life and Death Emperor sword and the Soul Kunlun sword, all the other swords perfectly fused with his body, making his sovereign divine energy skyrocket. His aura reached its peak. Suddenly, a purple light lit up in the darkness behind him. Strands of purple light rushed over and quickly wrapped around him. The power of the Kunlun Origin Court. In the face of external forces, the Kunlun Origin Court would automatically help its sovereign. It was also Zhou Xuanji's first time using this power. He was inwardly shocked. This is too strong. No wonder little sovereign said that he wouldn't lose in the vicinity of his origin court. In an instant his confidence exploded. He looked down on everything in his eyes. He raised his hands and grasped the Life and Death Emperor sword and the Soul Kunlun sword. Purple light burst forth from his eyes. The aura of the Sword Emperor Sovereign was completely revealed. Su Aoshue and Qilin Mei were shocked at the same time. The Kunlun Origin Court is so strong? Qilin Mei was shocked. His eyes turned cold. Zhou Xuanji raised the Life and Death Emperor sword and poured all the sovereign divine energy in his body into the blade. The next moment, sword light burst forth and rushed up with unstoppable momentum. Without any hesitation the sword slashed down. Su Aoshue immediately waved his hand and fled with Zhou Fa and Beast Sovereign. Qilin Mei raised her hand and slapped. Immediately, a universe kill order appeared in front of her out of thin air. It quickly grew bigger and blocked the sword chi for her. Boom. The violent sword chi forced Qilin Mei to retreat. She gnashed her teeth and murmured, "This guy." At this moment she suddenly understood the truth of the legend. Her figure flickered and disappeared into thin air. The universe kill order directly shattered and turned into ashes. Zhou Xuanji, offending the 9 absolutes of Qilin won't end well. Today I will let you go for the time being. The next time the 9 absolutes of Qilin come, they will not only kill your son but also slaughter the Kunlun Origin Court. Qilin Mei's cold voice echoed in the dark domain for a long time. Zhou Xuanji didn't chase after them. He just sneered. It would take time for the 9 absolutes of Qilin to make a comeback. After all, the endless universe was so big. Even great sovereigns couldn't come and go easily. After confirming that the aura of Su Aoshue and Qilin Mei had completely disappeared, Zhou Xuanji returned to the sovereign plane. Jiang Shui was still waiting for him at the table. He appeared beside her and sat down. "What's the matter?" Jiang Shui asked as she poured wine for him. Zhou Xuanji told her everything that had happened. He looked calm and didn't panic at all. After he finished, Jiang Shui asked, "Can you deal with the 9 absolutes of Qilin?" Zhou Xuanji was able to force the Qilin Mei to retreat. This meant that he was very powerful, even in the endless universe. "I'm not sure. But we'll deal with it when it comes. Even if I say that the Tanhua isn't here, the 9 absolutes of Qilin will not give up." Zhou Xuanji shook his head. Jiang Shui nodded. She understood this too. She couldn't help but sigh, "Your enemies are too big. Even if we cultivate with all our might, we can't keep up with you." Following Zhou Xuanji was both blissful and sad. No matter what kind of disaster they encountered, Zhou Xuanji was there to handle it. But at the same time, no matter what kind of enemy they encountered, they could only watch from the sidelines. Zhou Xuanji saw the worry in her eyes and said with a smile, "Your role to me is not to kill enemies with me. It's also very important to appease the rear." Jiang Shui smiled helplessly. She rolled her eyes and suddenly thought of something. She said, "Should I go out and do something too?" Zhou Xuanji touched her nose and said with a smile, "Do what you want to do. I support you." Not to mention Jiang Shui, even Xian Xianghua, Zhou Tanhua, and Zhou Shaoxin would find it difficult to catch up with his cultivation. "Then give me a god position," Jiang Shui tilted her head and said. Jiang Shui tilted her head and pondered. She began to imagine her future plans. Chapter 890. After the Qilin 9 absolutes left, Zhou Xuanji returned to his daily cultivation. He arranged a deity position for Jiang Shui and asked the 12 ancestors to announce it to the entire Kunlun origin court. Shiting goddess. Her job was to control the marriage in the origin court. In the Kunlun origin court, every creature was free in their emotions. But there could only be one Dao companion, just like a wife or a husband. Zhou Xuanji took Jiang Shui around the Kunlun origin court to choose a suitable female companion to serve her. This matter couldn't be handed over to the 12 ancestors in case they were too cautious. This trip lasted for 3 years. Zhou Xuanji and Jiang Shui chose 18 female cultivators from different divine ranges. All of them had the cultivation of Origin Fusion Divine Lord. Each of them was calm and beautiful, worthy of Jiang Shui's identity. After returning to the sovereign plane, Zhou Xuanji guided the Kunlun origin court's fate into Jiang Shui's body, allowing her to see the fate of all living beings and find the most suitable marriage. Zhou Xuanji asked Jiang Shui to leave some variables. Some marriages couldn't be destined by the heavens. Everything should have variables for there to be hope. Jiang Shui opened her eyes and sighed, "Fate is truly mysterious. How many people are willing to sacrifice their lives for their love? In the end, they only get the other party's indifference. How many infatuated men and women have been separated by the world? Love is truly difficult." Only she and Zhou Xuanji were in the palace. The 18 goddesses were waiting outside. "So, you have to grasp it well and reduce the tragedy of fate in this world," Zhou Xuanji said with a smile. Zhou Xuanji said with a smile. Then he changed his tone and said meaningfully, "Marriage can only be arranged and cannot be forced, understand? Some marriages may be good for you, but they are torturous for the people involved." Jiang Shui nodded and rolled her eyes at him, saying, "Don't worry, I know all this. Love can't be forced." After that, Jiang Shui began to travel around the Kunlun origin court with the 18 goddesses. With their cultivation, few people in the origin court could hurt them. Moreover, Zhou Xuanji was at the highest point and could see every corner of the Kunlun origin court. If they were in danger, he could immediately take action. No matter how far they were, he could reach them in an instant. After the birth of Shiqing goddess, Zhou Xuanji began to cultivate alone. As for Xian Xianghua, she was busy developing the Emperor Sword divine range. Sovereign Hongqian took Zhou Shaoxian to the Hongqian plain to cultivate. Everything was so harmonious. In the blink of an eye, another few hundred years passed. Zhou Xuanji's understanding of the rules of the mortal world became deeper and deeper, but he found that it was too difficult for his cultivation to improve greatly. He summoned Little Supreme Being and told him about his confusion. "I didn't expect you to be dissatisfied so quickly. You're just like an animal." Little Sovereign sighed with emotion. In the past, after he became a sovereign, he had wasted a lot of his cultivation time. Zhou Xuanji looked straight at him, which made him feel helpless. "If that's the case, you'll have no choice but to go out and search for dynasty realms. Only by devouring them will you be able to break through. However, the majority of dynasty realms have grand sovereigns overseeing them. I'm afraid you'll have to get past them first." Little Sovereign teased. Zhou Xuanji hadn't really fought against a great sovereign yet. When facing Su Aoxue and the Qilin Enchantress, they didn't fight at all. Once he left the Kunlun origin court, he would no longer be able to use the power of the Kunlun origin court. Zhou Xuanji asked curiously, "After defeating a great sovereign, how do I absorb a court realm?" The reason why he was able to become a supreme being was because he had obtained the recognition of a supreme being's power. The other court realms definitely wouldn't do. He could only conquer them by force. "I will teach you when the time comes. It's useless to tell you now. Different court realms have different absorption methods. You haven't gone to the endless universe. It's hard to explain it to you," Little Sovereign said, waving his hand. Little Sovereign waved his hand. Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji didn't insist. He sighed and said, "The Qilin 9 absolutes haven't made a comeback yet. It's not good for me to leave directly." Little Sovereign already knew about the Qilin 9 absolutes. He furrowed his brow and said, "They are indeed very troublesome. Back then I had to take a detour when I saw them. But because of you alone, it's impossible to attract all the Qilin 9 absolutes. They are all very busy." Mentioning the Qilin 9 absolutes gave him a headache. Back then he even scolded Zhou Xuanji, thinking that this kid was too impulsive. Zhou Xuanji asked, "How many of the Qilin 9 absolutes can I kill with the power of the Kunlun Origin Court? Only by killing them can I eliminate future troubles. Kill a few people? You must be dreaming. You can't kill any one of them. I know about the Qilin demon from last time. That girl is ruthless. She might not be your match, but if you fight to the death, she will be seriously injured and you will die," Little Sovereign said in a bad mood. He felt that it was necessary to give Zhou Xuanji a blow to prevent this kid from becoming arrogant. Zhou Xuanji helplessly said, "So, there is no solution to this situation. I can only wait?" Little Sovereign smiled and said, "You can send your avatars out to explore and find the whereabouts of the other court realms. It will be convenient for you to act in the future." Zhou Xuanji felt that it was reasonable. His eyes focused as an outer soul avatar directly separated from his eyes and landed in front of him. This outer soul avatar looked exactly the same as him. Even its aura was the same. After thinking for a moment, he divided another 9 outer soul avatars. With a wave of his right hand, he directly sent the 10 outer soul avatars out of the Kunlun Origin Court. TSK, your avatars are very accomplished. It's hard to tell the real from the fake," Little Sovereign said in amazement. He suddenly couldn't see through Zhou Xuanji. It seemed that while he was asleep, this kid had been growing rapidly. Zhou Xuanji just smiled and didn't answer. He then stored the Lesser Supreme Sword in the Supreme Storage and continued to cultivate. In a purple cloud cosmic domain, a huge ship that looked like a flood dragon was sailing. The dragon head was ferocious and as huge as a mountain. There were 2 tall buildings on the ship, both of which were tens of thousands of feet high. Countless creatures were standing on the corridors of each floor. On the deck, the Qilin demon was standing behind a man in a black robe. This man in a black robe was 10 feet tall. He had 4 curved and sharp horns on his head. His long blood-red hair gave him a wild and domineering look. He was wearing a blood-red heavy armor. He looked as if he had climbed out of a blood pool. The Sword Emperor of the Kunlun Origin Court? Interesting. But are you sure your mission target is still in the Kunlun Origin Court? The corner of the man in a black robe's mouth rose. He was smiling arrogantly. Hearing this, the Qilin demon lowered her head and replied, "No, his fate has changed. But the Sword Emperor contradicted our Qilin 9 absolutes. Are we going to let it go?" She gnashed her teeth at the thought of Zhou Xuanji's insolence. The man in a black robe turned around and raised her chin. He then said with a cold smile, Qilin 9 is not afraid of anyone. But there is no need to cause unnecessary trouble. Our current goal is to hurry up and collect opportunity stones, understand? As for the Sword Emperor, when this mission is over, I will personally destroy him. I will also destroy the Kunlun Origin Court along the way. There are always some guys who overestimate themselves in that place. Hearing this, the Qilin demon's eyes lit up. She nodded excitedly. Chapter 891. Big Brother, how far has the main mission evolved? The Qilin demon hugged the black-robed man's arm and asked coquettishly. The black-robed man turned around and looked ahead with a deep look in his eyes. "One more person," he said casually. "Who?" The Qilin demon asked in astonishment. She thought that they were only lacking serendipity stones. "Speaking of which, that person is related to Kunlun Origin Court. You will know in the future that he is a formidable opponent of mine," the black-robed man said softly. The corner of his lips curled into a cruel smile. The Qilin demon fell into deep thought. What kind of existence could become a formidable opponent of her big brother? On the other side, in a dusky universe, Zhou Xuanji's avatar traveled at high speed. He looked around and did not want to miss any clues around him. "Strange, there's the aura of living beings here," Zhou Xuanji mumbled. Zhou Xuanji mumbled. Now that he was in his original consciousness, he could still split his divine will. It was not difficult to multitask to become a great sovereign. It had been 8 years since the avatar left. Only this avatar could sense the aura of living beings. In the boundless universe, the aura of living beings was rare. Take the Kunlun Origin Court for example. Other than the sovereigns, how many people could leave the Origin Court freely? After wandering for an hour, Zhou Xuanji finally sensed the aura of living beings. He flew toward the direction of the aura and finally stopped before a fist-sized rock. The rock was silver in color and uneven. There were many similar rocks around, but only this one caught Zhou Xuanji's attention. He grabbed the rock and probed it with his divine sense. The next second he saw a world. Court realm. This court realm was extremely huge, like a pyramid. The court realm was at the top, and below it were countless layers of universes. The aura of living beings gathered together as though they were going to overturn the top of the world. Zhou Xuanji was delighted. He finally found a court realm. Humph! A cold snort resounded beside his ear, which almost shattered his soul. Far away in the Kunlun origin court, Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes. There was a silhouette in his eyes. This person was wearing a white robe with blue characters on it. He was handsome and had a jade ruler in his hand. It was the sovereign of the Fang court realm. Interesting. This guy seems to have just stepped into the great sovereign realm, Zhou Xuanji mumbled to himself. Zhou Xuanji muttered to himself. The other party did not have enough experience and only discovered him after he found the court realm stone, which meant that his cultivation was inferior to his. However, if he rushed over, it would take at least a year. If the 9 absolutes of the Qilin rushed over at this time, it would be a disaster. He sighed, feeling very unhappy. Damn the 9 absolutes of the Qilin. One day I will destroy all of you. Zhou Xuanji thought to himself hatefully before closing his eyes again. However, just as he closed his eyes, he suddenly sensed something and opened them again. Why is he here? Zhou Xuanji mumbled to himself with a strange expression. A figure appeared at the edge of the supreme plane. This person was Reverend Daojing, the heavenly saint who had once thought highly of him. At that time, Sage Daojing had left the heavenly law universe in order to search for the Kunlun origin court. From then on, the Wanshan Great Thousand faced a calamity. His actions were very similar to Sage Wu Zhou's. Zhou Xuanji had some resentment towards Sage Daojing, but he had let it go now. He was very curious as to how Sage Daojing had come to the sovereign plane. Meanwhile, Sage Daojing held a piece of silver jade in his hand. Looking at the majestic celestial mist around him, a look of amazement appeared on his face. What is this place? Could it be the legendary Kunlun origin court? Sage Daojing mumbled. He was shocked by the spiritual qi here. He was overjoyed. If he cultivated in seclusion here, his cultivation would surely increase tremendously. After wandering for thousands of years, he had finally found it. Sage Daojing let out a long sigh and regained his composure. He was a heavenly saint. He should not be surprised by anything. He scanned his surroundings and flew forward. At this moment, 2 beautiful figures appeared in front of him. They were Mortal Sovereign and Zhou Xiaoxian. Sovereign, do you think Father will be surprised by my cultivation? Zhou Xiaoxian asked excitedly. She hugged Mortal Sovereign's arm, looking very intimate. Mortal Sovereign wanted to pull his arm back but was afraid of hurting her. He said helplessly, "Do you think your father doesn't know?" Zhou Xiaoxian heard him and felt that it made sense. After all, her father was already the most powerful person in the Kunlun origin court. He knew everything and knew everything. Mortal Sovereign suddenly turned his head and looked at Sage Daojing in the distance. He said meaningfully, "Why is he here?" Zhou Xiaoxian also turned her head and her eyes widened. Sage Daojing. She still remembered Sage Daojing. Back in the Wanshan Great Thousand, Sage Daojing was her father's backer. Why was he here? Sage Daojing was very nervous, but when he saw Zhou Xiaoxian he could not help but frown. This woman looked very familiar. He could not be blamed for not recognizing Zhou Xiaoxian. Zhou Xiaoxian had been reborn, and her cultivation far surpassed his. Her temperament made her even more beautiful. How could he remember her at first glance? Sage Daojing, why are you here? Did my father summon you? Zhou Xiaoxian asked curiously. With a wave of her right hand, Sage Daojing appeared in front of them. Sage Daojing was shocked. In front of this woman he could not resist at all. Especially Mortal Sovereign's gaze. It made his hair stand on end and he did not dare to look at her. He braced himself and asked, "Your father is?" He was shocked. Why did she know his name? He carefully looked at Zhou Xiaoxian, and his eyes suddenly widened. She is impossible. How could she be here? Sage Daojing's body began to tremble. He could not believe his eyes. "Hand over the stone in your hand," Mortal Sovereign said softly. As he spoke, the stone in Reverend Daojing's hand flew into his hand. Ah! Sage Daojing was furious and panicked. Facing Mortal Sovereign, he did not dare to act rashly. Zhou Xiaoxian blinked and said, "You even forgot my father?" Then how did you come here? This is the supreme plane, the cultivation plane of the Lord of Kunlun Origin Court. No one is allowed to enter. Lord of Kunlun Origin Court. Sage Daojing was so frightened that his body trembled. No wonder the spiritual chi here was so dense. He asked cautiously, then why are you here? Could it be that Zhou Xuanji is favored by the Lord of Kunlun Origin Court? He had a deep impression of Zhou Xuanji. That brat's talent was outstanding, and he was courageous and had many opportunities. He might have been favored by the Lord of Kunlun Origin Court. My father is the Lord of Kunlun Origin Court, Zhou Xiaoxian giggled. Zhou Xiaoxian giggled. Seeing Sage Daojing trembling in fear, she was very excited. She felt great when she put herself in Zhou Xuanji's shoes. If she was the main character, it would be even better. Sage Daojing felt like he was struck by lightning. He was stunned on the spot and his mouth opened wide. Mortal Sovereign was playing with the stone with a slight frown. She said in a low voice, "This stone." Chapter 892. Sovereign, what's wrong with this stone? Zhou Xiaoxian looked at Sovereign Mortal World and asked curiously. Her eyes fell on the stone. It looked simple and ordinary. There was nothing special about it. Sovereign Mortal World said softly, I can't see through it. Maybe you have to let your father see it. But obviously, this stone came from outside the court because I have never seen such a stone. She glanced at Sage Daojing and asked expressionlessly, where did you get this stone? It's impossible for you to break in with your strength. Sage Daojing was extremely nervous. He didn't know how to answer. This was his treasure. How could it be robbed by others? If it weren't for this stone, he would have died long ago. But now, facing Sovereign Mortal World, he didn't dare to act rashly. Come here. Zhou Xuanji's voice suddenly came, and the three of them were teleported to the Supreme Palace. Sage Daojing looked up and saw Zhou Xuanji sitting on the golden throne. He fell into shock. It's really Zhou Xuanji. Could it be that he was the Lord of Kunlun Origin Court in his previous life? Was that why he was so monstrous? Sage Daojing's mind was in a mess. He didn't speak. Zhou Xuanji was so mighty. He had never seen such a mighty existence. It was as if he was the supreme ruler, controlling everything and looking down on the world. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, Sage, long time no see. You still haven't found the Kunlun Origin Court? His gaze saw through Venerable Daojing and saw Venerable Daojing's fate. This guy had entered the void boundary before. He was about to enter the Kunlun Origin Court when he encountered a battle between two nine vast heavens sovereigns and was sucked into the turbulence of time and space. In a daze, Sage Daojing obtained this stone by chance. He relied on this stone to cross the universe. After going through many hardships, he finally mistakenly entered the sovereign plane. This stone didn't come from the Kunlun Origin Court. Zhou Xuanji couldn't use the exterminating divine eyes to see its origin. Sage Daojing asked bitterly, I didn't expect you to be the Lord of Kunlun Origin Court. Can you tell me where the Kunlun Origin Court is? Does it really exist? He abandoned everything to search for the Kunlun Origin Court, but, at this moment he was confused. He even felt that reality was a nightmare. Back then Zhou Xuanji was under him. If he had stayed, wouldn't he have followed Zhou Xuanji here? When he thought of this, he felt suffocated and aggrieved. The Kunlun Origin Court is far more prosperous than you think. I can arrange for you to enter the Kunlun Origin Court, but this stone belongs to me. How about it? Zhou Xuanji looked at Sage Daojing and said with a light smile. He sighed in his heart. Seeing an old friend again, it was true that things were still the same, but the people had changed. Looking back, most of the people who had left a deep impression on him were no longer around. What would those people think if they knew of his achievements? Sage Daojing hesitated. He felt quite tired and wanted to calm down, but he was reluctant to part with this stone. If not for this stone, he would have died a long time ago. Zhou Xuanji said meaningfully, there are still people you know in the Emperor Sword Divine range. You won't be lonely there. This stone might not be an opportunity for you. It might be a disaster. This time it brought you to me. If it brings you to another sovereign, what will happen to you? Sage Daojing was covered in cold sweat as he listened. Although he didn't know what kind of status a supreme being had, it was definitely an existence he couldn't afford to offend. The opportunity is in front of you. If you don't grasp it, then you are really stupid, Mortal Sovereign snorted coldly. Autarch Crimson Dust snorted coldly, causing Reverend Daojing to feel even more conflicted. Zhou Xuanji sighed softly and said, I am indebted to you, so I will treat you well. This stone is really not something you should have. It might bring a great disaster. Anything that came from outside the Kunlun Origin Court could bring danger. Sage Daojing sighed and said, Okay, I will listen to you. Zhou Xuanji smiled and focused his eyes. Sage Daojing disappeared into thin air and was sent to the Emperor's Sword Divine Range. He was sent directly to Xian Daoya and Daoya Old Man so that they could settle down Sage Daojing. Father, look at my cultivation. How is it? I have improved a lot, right? Zhou Xiaoxian finally found the opportunity. She came up to Zhou Xuanji and said with a proud smile. She had already stepped into the Origin Fusion Divine Lord First Enlightenment stage. It could be said that she had improved by leaps and bounds. Zhou Xuanji didn't pay attention to her before. Now he was very curious about how Mortal Sovereign taught her. Guess what is Tanhua's cultivation now? Zhou Xuanji teased. Hearing this, Zhou Xiaoxuan's face immediately fell. She snorted coldly, stomped her feet, and walked to the palace with her back facing Zhou Xuanji. Mortal Sovereign then said, I will return her to you. Next, I want to leave the Kunlun Origin Court alone and explore the outside world. Zhou Xuanji frowned. He knew how dangerous the endless universe was. He had already had sex with Mortal Sovereign before. Naturally, he regarded her as his woman. How could he let her be in danger? Don't worry, Starpincher left me an artifact. It will take me to the plane where she is. I can also help you take a look at Tanhua's situation, Mortal Sovereign said seriously. Otar Crimson Dust said seriously. She had considered this matter carefully. Since a long time ago her cultivation could no longer grow. Only by going to the endless universe could she have the hope of becoming stronger. She also wanted to become a great sovereign. Zhou Xuanji's frown deepened. Because of the Qilin 9 absolutes, he couldn't leave directly. But he was really worried about letting Mortal Sovereign leave alone. He said in a deep voice, wait a little longer. I will also go out later. I can give you a ride. Mortal Sovereign hesitated for a moment before nodding. Next, Zhou Xuanji chatted with them for a while before letting them go. He picked up Sage Daojing's stone and began studying it. No matter how his divine will penetrated the stone, he couldn't find anything. It looked ordinary, but there was a trace of space-time fluctuation inside. Although it was weak, it was real. What is it? Why do I feel like I've seen it before? Zhou Xuanji mumbled to himself with a puzzled look on his face. He injected his supreme divine power into it. Boom. A wave of violent impact suddenly erupted, shaking the supreme palace until it trembled, and his robes fluttered non-stop. He fixed his eyes on it and saw strange words of light flying out from the stone, coiling around the stone and forming a halo. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes. Monstrous waves were set off in his heart. These words of light seemed small, but they contained terrifying power. They were even stronger than his supreme divine power. What the hell is this? He quickly took out the lesser supreme sword and summoned Little Sovereign. Little Sovereign looked down in a daze. His eyes immediately widened in shock. Opportunity Stone. How come you have this? He cried out in shock. He was dumbfounded. Zhou Xuanji asked, what's the origin of this stone? Opportunity Stone? Could it be related to the opportunity of the three sovereigns? Little Sovereign adjusted his emotions. His expression was complicated as he whispered, this is a treasure from the endless universe. It can increase the supreme divine power and suppress space-time. Chapter 893. Increase the supreme divine power? Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. He was immediately interested in the Serendipity Stone. Little Sovereign continued, opportunity stones are rare in the endless universe. They are treasures fought over by Grand Supremes. They are even harder to find than the court realm. If you have 10 opportunity stones, you can directly break through to the second court Grand Supremes. The more Zhou Xuanji heard, the more delighted he became. He had learned of another path to become more powerful. He looked up at Little Sovereign with a bit of bitterness in his eyes and asked, why didn't you say so earlier? Didn't you say that I can only become stronger by absorbing the realms of the court? Little Sovereign rolled his eyes at him and snappily said, Opportunity Stone, Opportunity Stone. Don't you understand the word opportunity? How difficult is it? I only managed to obtain one opportunity stone in my entire life, and in order to save my life, I had no choice but to give it up. Speaking of this matter, his face was full of unwillingness. Oh? Who could force you to hand over the treasure in your hands? Zhou Xuanji asked curiously. He had always been interested in Little Sovereign's past, especially the cause of Little Sovereign's death. Little Sovereign curled his lips and said, who else could it be? The 9 absolutes of the Qilin. Those guys wantonly plundered the opportunity stones. It is precisely because of their existence that the opportunity stones became a disaster. Hurry up and absorb it in case the 9 absolutes Qilin divinates this chance stone. After all, you've already been targeted by them. If you attract the chance stone, it won't be good. Zhou Xuanji raised his eyebrows. He did not expect the Qilin 9 absolutes to be so domineering. Why does it sound like he's the overlord of the endless universe? Without hesitation, he began to refine the opportunity stone. Opportunity stones contained massive amounts of energy. Zhou Xuanji could not refine them directly and needed some time. In the dark void, there was a mountain range suspended in the air. It was like a coiled dragon, and its aura was violent and imposing. Within the mountain range there were verdant hills, clear waters, and green trees everywhere. It was like the beautiful scenery of a fairyland. Zhou Tanhua was sitting on a branch with his legs crossed and a sword laid flat on his lap. He closed his eyes and quietly touched the scabbard. His black hair fluttered in the breeze, and his aura gradually increased. Shen Yinxing appeared in midair and looked down at him. She nodded with satisfaction and murmured, "This kid is really a genius. He is worthy of being his son." Ever since she accepted Zhou Tanhua as her disciple, she had become more and more satisfied with him. "Pixstar, come here." An old voice floated into her ears, and she disappeared into thin air. She came to a Taoist temple and knelt on the ground, worshipping the old man who was meditating in front of her. "Master, what are your orders?" Shen Yinxing asked respectfully. She was arrogant and insufferably arrogant outside, but in the face of her master she was a good girl. The elder wore a deep blue Taoist robe. He had a head of white hair and there was a jade hairpin in his hair. His aura was faintly discernible. When he opened his eyes, the light within the Taoist temple became bright. "Niaoxing, you should go and invite his father." His expression was calm and unfathomable. Shen Yinxing asked doubtfully, "Why did he come?" "He is the master of the Kunlun Origin Court. If he leaves, I'm afraid the Kunlun Origin Court will be in trouble." The elder replied, "The 9 absolutes of the Qilin no longer have the time to deal with him." Hearing this, Shen Yinxing was overjoyed. She had complete trust in her master. She asked curiously, "What are the 9 absolutes of the Qilin busy with?" "They have been collecting opportunity stones since a long time ago. Even I can't guess their purpose. However, they have already gathered and rushed to the myriad domain devil lair. I reckon that something big is going to happen," the old man said leisurely. His expression was still calm. Shen Yinxing frowned and asked, "Aren't we going to stop them? They're not good people. If they dominate the endless universe, all the courts and planes will suffer." The old man shook his head and said, "Don't worry, there are many strong cultivators in the endless universe. The 9 absolutes of the Qilin are not invincible. They also have strong enemies." When Shen Yinxing heard this, she became interested in the strong enemies of the 9 absolutes of the Qilin. Just as she wanted to continue to ask, the old man continued, "Go and pick up Zhou Xuanji. I'm very interested in him." Shen Yinxing immediately saluted and turned to leave. The door of the Taoist temple closed, and a light figure emerged from behind the old man. His true face couldn't be seen clearly. "Jiang Feili, how long are you going to stay here?" the light figure asked. His voice sounded like he was gnashing his teeth. The old man called Jiang Feili replied, "The time is not right. The endless universe seems calm now, but in fact, undercurrents are surging. Whoever comes out first will end up the worst." The light figure no longer answered and drilled back into his body. Sovereign Plain, boom, boom, boom. The giant mountain where the Supreme Palace was located kept shaking. The sound of air turbulence could be heard one after another. Inside the palace, Zhou Xuanji was meditating in the air. His body was bursting with strands of purple light, illuminating the entire palace. In his palms, the opportunity stone was less than half of its original size. Endless energy poured into Zhou Xuanji's body and turned into sovereign divine power. Half a piece of opportunity stone was enough to increase his cultivation by several times. He slowly opened his eyes and looked at the opportunity stone in his hand. A hint of reluctance flashed in his eyes. "Just half of it. How good would it be if I had more opportunity stones?" At this moment, his desire to go out became even stronger. He not only wanted to devour the courts but also to find opportunity stones. He wanted to become the strongest existence in the endless universe. At this moment, footsteps came from the front. He looked up and saw that it was Shen Yinxing. Shen Yinxing's cultivation was higher than his. The space barrier of the sovereign plane was nothing to her. As for the sage manifestation array, Zhou Xuanji had already tacitly recognized her aura to avoid accidentally hurting her. Who told her to always appear and disappear unpredictably? "Why are you back?" Zhou Xuanji asked as he quickly stored the opportunity stone into the supreme storage. Shen Yinxing replied casually, I missed you. What kind of stone were you holding just now? It has a lot of energy. Zhou Xuanji smiled. Only a ghost would believe it. How's the epiphyllum? He continued to ask. After so many years, Zhou Xuanji's cultivation should have advanced by leaps and bounds. Shen Yinxing shrugged and replied, just make do with it. It's only Origin Fusion Divine Lord 7 enlightened. Only Zhou Xuanji's face twitched slightly. Sure enough, the opportunity outside the Kunlun Origin Court is greater. This kid has become stronger. This time I came back because I want to take you to see my revered master. My revered master said that the Qilin 9 absolutes have all gone to the myriad domain devil lair. They won't trouble you for the time being, Shen Yinxing said as she stepped in the air towards Zhou Xuanji. She looked at Zhou Xuanji and sighed in her heart. His son is monstrous and his father is even more monstrous. Staying in the Kunlun Origin Court, this guy can also become stronger quickly. It's too unreasonable. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow when he heard this. He had finally waited for this opportunity. Why does your revered master want to see me? Zhou Xuanji asked in doubt. He was just a nobody in the endless universe. How could he arouse the curiosity of such a powerful cultivator? Could it be because of his son? Shen Yinxing shook her head and said, I don't know. Don't worry. With me here he won't harm you. Maybe it's an opportunity. Chapter 894. Zhou Xuanji and Shen Yinxing chatted for a while. In the end, he decided to leave the Kunlun Origin Court with her. But before that, he had to give them some instructions. He went to look for Jiang Shui, while Shen Yinxing went to look for Supreme Hongqian. Sovereign Hongqian wanted to leave long ago. Naturally, she couldn't miss this opportunity. Zhou Xuanji didn't want to hide it from her either. Jiang Shui knew that he was going to leave. Although she was worried, she did not stop him. She could tell that he wanted to go out and search for opportunities. After the two of them spent a few days together, Zhou Xuanji met with the 12 Law ancestors. When the ancestors learned that he was about to leave, they were all shocked. However, knowing that Zhou Xuanji was going to meet an ancient senior from outside the court, they became excited again. Finally, they promised to protect the Kunlun Origin Court, and only then did Zhou Xuanji feel at ease and leave. Zhou Xuanji, Shen Yinxing, and Mortal Sovereign came to the Dark Domain together. Shen Yinxing used her supreme divine power to lead the two of them to fly at full speed. My master's name is Jiang Feili. He's extremely famous in the endless universe and has lived longer than your little sovereign. When you see him you can't be rude. Shen Yinxing turned around and reminded. She directly ignored Supreme Hongqian. It seemed that the estrangement between the two sisters had not been completely resolved. Compared to Qilin 9 absolutes, is he stronger? Zhou Xuanji asked. Now, the Qilin 9 absolutes had already become his standard to measure the boundless universe. After all, he had already viewed the 9 absolutes of Qilin as his number one enemy. Shen Yinxing nodded and smiled proudly. I'm not bragging. At least the leader of the 9 killers of the Qilin is on par with my master. Zhou Xuanji and Mortal Sovereign were both shocked to hear this. No wonder Shen Yinxing was so powerful. It turned out that her master had such a great background. Zhou Xuanji became interested in Jiang Feili. Why was this ancient almighty looking for him? He continued to ask, can you ask your master to accept your sister as a disciple? Shen Yinxing snorted and said, of course, I left her a token before. It's not because of our previous relationship. I just feel that she is talented and she is also a mortal god. Zhou Xuanji smiled but did not point it out. Autarch Crimson Dust revealed a smile as well. It had been a long time since she had smiled so sincerely. When Shen Yinxing saw them laughing, she couldn't help but frown impatiently. With two great supremes traveling together, no one dared to find trouble with them, so they were unobstructed. Zhou Xuanji passed by the court realm he had discovered, but he did not stop. Absorbing a court realm required time, and he did not have the time for now. 3 years later, Zhou Xuanji and Mortal Sovereign came to a mountain range under the lead of Shen Yinxing. From afar they could feel Zhou Tanhua's aura. The same was true for Zhou Tanhua. He quickly arrived in front of the trio. Father. Supreme Crimson Dust. Zhou Tanhua excitedly saluted. He still maintained the posture of a teenager. Compared to Zhou Xuanji's impression of him, he was much calmer. Shen Yinxing curled her lips and took the lead. What about me? Zhou Tanhua reacted and said, Greetings, master. However, his gaze was fixed on Zhou Xuanji, and his eyes were filled with delight. He knew that Shen Yinxing had gone to find Zhou Xuanji, but he didn't expect her to come back so soon. Zhou Xuanji sized him up and smiled satisfactorily. Not bad, looks like you didn't slack off, Zhou Xuanji said with a gratified smile. There was nothing wrong with talent. Hard work was always the most important factor in becoming strong. Zhou Tanhua touched his nose and smiled, neither arrogant nor impatient. Let's go, we'll go see my master first. Tanhua, take your Sanyang to rest. Shen Yinxing said, waving her hand before leaving with Zhou Xuanji. Supreme Crimson Dust's cheeks were slightly red as she bit her lips. Looking at Shen Yinxing's back, her eyes were filled with bitterness. Zhou Tanhua was stunned. He looked at Supreme Crimson Dust with a strange look in his eyes. Humph. Supreme Crimson Dust let out a cold snort. Zhou Tanhua hurriedly lowered his head. On the other side, Shen Yinxing brought Zhou Xuanji into the Taoist temple. Zhou Xuanji also saw Jiang Feili. The first impression this person gave him was that he was unfathomable. He seemed calm but was filled with evil qi. This kind of evil qi couldn't be identified with the naked eye. It was his intuition. Revered master, he is here, Shen Yinxing said with a respectful tone. Shen Yinxing said in a respectful tone. Jiang Feili replied, okay, you can leave first. Hearing this, Shen Yinxing immediately saluted and retreated. Only Zhou Xuanji and Jiang Feili were left in the Taoist temple. The atmosphere had become silent. Zhou Xuanji bowed and said, greetings, senior. Jiang Feili opened his eyes. A cold glint flashed in his eyes. Zhou Xuanji couldn't help but squint. Zhou Xuanji, the Kunlun Origin Court has never had a sovereign like you. Maybe one day you will surpass Sovereign Heaven, Jiang Feili said meaningfully. Sovereign Heaven. The most powerful sovereign in the history of the Kunlun Origin Court. That was an ancient legend. Some people even believed that there was no Sovereign Heaven at all. He was just a fabrication made up by later generations. Zhou Xuanji asked, have you ever seen a Sovereign Heaven? Jiang Feili nodded and then began talking about the past. Before he had attained the Tao, the Cardinal Heaven Realm had already dominated the boundless universe. The Cardinal Heaven Realm had played an indispensable role in the boundless universe's current prosperity. Sovereign Heaven opened up the paths of the universe with boundless divine power, divided the planes and created the second court realm. After that, more and more great sovereigns imitated him, and more court realms appeared. It could be said that the cultivation method after the great sovereign of the court realm was created by Sovereign Heaven. Zhou Xuanji listened carefully. He didn't expect Sovereign Heaven to have such a status in the endless universe. Sovereign Heaven had disappeared for countless years, and no one knew if they were dead or alive. The Qilin 9 absolutes that you offended are fanatical believers of Sovereign Heaven. They want to use the sovereign serendipity to create a Sovereign Heaven and make it theirs, Jiang Feili said faintly. Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked in confusion, can a Sovereign Heaven be created? Could it be that a Sovereign Heaven had already fallen and only a remnant soul was left? If the Qilin 9 absolutes succeeded, the Qilin 9 absolutes might be able to dominate the endless universe with the help of a Sovereign Heaven. As an enemy of the Qilin 9 absolutes, Zhou Xuanji did not want to see such a scene. A sovereign serendipity is omnipotent. They might really succeed. They have collected a large number of serendipity stones and are heading toward the 10,000 domain devil lair. I hope you can stop them, Jiang Feili said straightforwardly. Having heard this, Zhou Xuanji frowned again. Stop the Qilin 9 absolutes with his strength? Wasn't this pushing him into a pit? Zhou Xuanji looked at Jiang Feili warily. Jiang Feili laughed and said, don't worry, I won't let you die for nothing. When the time comes I will act as well. The reason why I let you participate is because you are the current sovereign of the Kunlun Origin Court. If you encounter a Sovereign Heaven's will, you can attract it. Before that, I will help you become more powerful. You have already absorbed the serendipity stones. Do you still want more? Speaking to there, Jiang Feili gave a faint smile. It was as if he had completely seen through Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji was immediately moved. He came out to become more powerful. If he could get rid of the Qilin 9 absolutes, he would naturally do it. This was killing two birds with one stone. It was just that the process would be extremely dangerous. Chapter 895. After hesitating for a while, Zhou Xuanji agreed. Jiang Feili was very happy about this. As expected of the Kunlun Origin Court Supremes. Courageous and daring. Jiang Feili laughed loudly. At the same time, he waved his right sleeve and 15 serendipity stones of different sizes flew before Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji scanned them with his divine will and confirmed that they were really serendipity stones. He was delighted and stored them in the supreme storage. He looked up and asked, when do we act? Jiang Feili shook his head and said, it's not time yet. Go and cultivate first, I'll remind you when the time comes. Zhou Xuanji nodded and saluted before turning to leave. After he left, A figure flew out from behind Jiang Feili. This child is indeed extraordinary. He is very similar to Wu Zhou from back then. However, Wu Zhou betrayed you. Aren't you afraid of repeating his mistakes? The light figure asked coldly. Jiang Feili's expression was calm as he said, He is not Wu Zhou. I believe in my disciple's insight. He is more principled and decisive than Wu Zhou. In his words, Supreme Wu Zhou wasn't even worth mentioning. I hope so. Don't waste your efforts. The figure sighed. Saying so, he went back into Jiang Feili's body. Outside the Taoist temple, Zhou Xuanji played with the opportunity stone in his hand as he flew into the distance. Shen Yinxing suddenly stood in front of him and said with a smile, How is it? Are you satisfied? My master actually gave you the opportunity stone. When I went to find you, weren't you refining the opportunity stone? You even pretended not to let me know. Zhou Xuanji faked a cough. He did not expect this girl to know about serendipity stones. He pretended to be calm and asked, Is there a suitable place for me to go into seclusion? Shen Yinxing nodded and turned to lead the way. The two quickly flew to the other side of the mountain. They entered a cave, and after passing through the dark tunnel, they came to a place with verdant hills and limpid water. Blue sky, white clouds, high mountains, flowing water, it was as beautiful as a painting. This is my cave. You can cultivate here in the future. Shen Yinxing pointed to the front and smiled, looking like she was presenting a treasure. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, Thank you, I'm going to cultivate now. In other words, you can leave now. I'll accompany you, Shen Yinxing said with a smile. Her charming smile gave Zhou Xuanji a bad feeling. Zhou Xuanji frowned and instinctively wanted to reject. But this was Shen Yinxing's territory, how could he refuse? Forget it. Zhou Xuanji shook his head. He turned around and flew toward a tall mountain in the distance and landed on its peak. He sat down cross-legged and took out the opportunity stone that he had yet to refine. Seeing him hurriedly enter the cultivation state, Shen Yinxing smiled slyly. 10 years later, Zhou Xuanji began to refine the second opportunity stone. The majestic energy in the opportunity stone fascinated him. He did not allow himself to rest. Instead, he enjoyed this feeling. However, Shen Yinxing came to disturb him. Don't keep absorbing the opportunity stones, or else your foundation won't be stable. I found another Grand Supreme. Let's go hunt. Shen Yinxing grabbed Zhou Xuanji and said excitedly, A Grand Sovereign? Hunting? Zhou Xuanji was speechless. Can't you show some respect to great sovereigns? On second thought, he realized that he couldn't blindly increase his cultivation. He needed to fight to digest it. It just so happened that he hadn't fought against a Grand Supreme before. Just like that, Zhou Xuanji left with Shen Yinxing. Not only them, but Mortal Sovereign and Zhou Tanhua also followed. Shen Yinxing said that she wanted to broaden their horizons. Neither of them refused. On the contrary, they were very excited. Along the way, Zhou Tanhua kept asking questions. He couldn't maintain his usual calm. Most of the time, it was Shen Yinxing who answered him. But in the end, Shen Yinxing became impatient and no longer paid attention to him. How many great sovereigns are there in the endless universe? Mortal Sovereign asked curiously. When she was in the Kunlun Origin Court, she was one of the most powerful cultivators. But when she came to the endless universe, she felt very small. Shen Yinxing shook her head and said, It's very difficult for great sovereigns to die unless they encounter a stronger opponent. Since ancient times, how much time has passed? Let alone great sovereigns, there are countless court realms. Some stand majestically in the universe and some are hidden in the dust. The endless universe was the greatest achievement left behind by the sages. It represented boundlessness, infinite hope, and possibilities. Perhaps the first great sovereigns had reached the top because they felt lonely. That was why they had such a magnificent feat. That was why the later great sovereigns had always had a goal to strive for. Zhou Xuanji was thinking about sovereign heaven. Just how strong was that ancestor of the Kunlun Origin Court? To be able to make the 9 absolutes Qilin a believer, it was probably not something that the 9 halls Grand Supremes could do. Of course, it was also possible that a cardinal heaven expert had been deified. Zhou Xuanji was more inclined to believe the former. They flew for about half a year. They arrived at a vast ocean. This ocean surged aimlessly in space-time, sweeping out for tens of millions of kilometers. The seawater was blue, and there were countless star-like lights in the sea. These lights were all great worlds, and the ocean that gathered together was the court realm. Zhou Xuanji and the others looked over from afar and were all stunned. It's so beautiful, I can't bear to destroy it, Shen Yinxing said with a smile. A long silver chain appeared in her hand and she threw it directly into the blue ocean. The long chain danced and quickly elongated. In the blink of an eye, it became incomparably huge. Boom. The silver chain struck the blue ocean with a domineering aura, and a blue light burst forth, blocking the silver chain. The blue ocean violently fluctuated, and the seawater surged to either side, as if a massive piece of cotton had been struck and deformed. The scene was very spectacular. An extremely powerful aura broke out, enveloping the space-time turbulence. Humph! A cold snort filled with anger resounded. Zhou Tanhua and Hong Qin sovereigns' faces turned pale. They felt their blood and qi fluctuating. They felt very uncomfortable. Shen Yanqing immediately rushed over like a sharp arrow and plunged into the blue ocean. Zhou Xuanji did the same. The Life and Death Emperor sword and Soul Kunlun sword appeared in his hands out of thin air. He followed suit and plunged into the blue ocean. Countless great worlds entered his field of vision. In front of him, two silhouettes were colliding with each other. Their aura was terrifying, shaking the surrounding space-time. Shen Yanqing held the long silver chain as if she was holding a sharp whip, wantonly lashing at her opponent. The great sovereign was wearing black armor. His hair was disheveled and he was holding two exaggeratedly huge blades in his hands. His face was hideous. He was crazily casting his divine abilities, but he couldn't suppress Shen Yanqing. Zhou Xuanji used the sword fusion technique. His figure moved and immediately appeared before the black-armored great sovereign. Clang, clang. The blades and swords clashed. The black-armored great sovereign was caught off guard and was sent flying. This power, the black-armored great sovereign was both shocked and angry. The sovereign's divine energy in his body condensed into a substance, like strands of black smoke overflowing from his body. Shen Yanqing raised her brow as the corner of her mouth rose. She thought to herself, it seems that he still has a lot of secrets. He recklessly increased his cultivation and his power is still so strong. Zhou Xuanji didn't know what she was thinking. His mind was already focused on the battle. He wanted to truly feel the battle between great sovereigns. Chapter 896. Who the hell are you? Why did you attack my court realm? The black-armored great sovereign demanded angrily. However, his hands didn't stop waving the two sabers in a frenzy. Saber chi crisscrossed and tore the surrounding space apart. Many of them were destroyed, representing the annihilation of a great world. Zhou Xuanji noticed that the Fang court realm was very stable. Although it was not as stable as the Kunlun origin court, the vitality here was much more prosperous. It seemed that this court world was very well managed. I'll leave him to you and this Fang Ting realm belongs to me. How about it? Zhou Xuanji asked as he fought. Shen Yanqing curled her lips and said, all right. This fellow really didn't want to suffer any losses. The two of them joined forces to suppress the black-armored Grand Paragon again. Amidst the vast blue ocean, their auras rose steadily, stirring up the seawater and creating raging waves. The outside world. Zhou Tanhua was so excited that he asked curiously, what do you think about the strength of that Grand Supreme Being? How much weaker is he compared to my father and master? Ottar Crimson Dust said in a low voice, he shouldn't be much weaker than them. Otherwise he wouldn't have such momentum. Even though she was far away, she could still feel the terrifying aura within the blue ocean. The divine power of a grand sovereign was indeed frighteningly strong. At the very least, Crimson Dust Sovereign didn't dare to rashly approach him. Although she was a sovereign of laws, she was still far from being a grand supreme. While they were cheering outside, Zhou Xuanji was already fully immersed in the battle. He activated his battle physique, and his supreme divine power rose to an unprecedented level. Silver light burst forth from the surface of his body, and it was as if a beam of light was crazily attacking the black-armored great sovereign. The two divine swords also displayed extraordinary strength, and they suppressed the black-armored great sovereign to the point where he couldn't resist at all. The sword light of the Soul Kunlun sword kept flickering. Zhou Xuanji's soul origin had already been injected into the blade. It was destroying the black-armored great sovereign's soul in the battle, making him a little dazed. In a battle of this level, a single moment of absent-mindedness could lead to defeat, let alone prolonged absent-mindedness. Sword wounds appeared on black-armored great sovereign's body. His physical body was strong, so even if his neck was cut by a sword, it didn't break. Rumble, just at this time, the blue sea suddenly became violent, and strands of purple light gathered from all directions, and unstoppably poured into the black-armored great sovereign. The power of the court. Zhou Xuanji had used the power of the Kunlun origin court before, so he was very familiar with this scene. He immediately used the ultimate chaos Dao, and boundless sword chi engulfed the black-armored great sovereign. He did not stop and continued to use the delusion sea of swords. Divine will transformed into swords, and the swords converged into an ocean, filling the blue ocean, fierce and domineering. Shen Yanqing stopped. She looked at Zhou Xuanji with eyes full of splendor. This guy, she was shocked by Zhou Xuanji's performance. These divine abilities all had their own profoundness, and he continuously unleashed them like a berserk wolf, giving off a majestic aura. If Zhou Xuanji had the same cultivation as her, she might have lost to him. At this moment she suddenly understood why Jiang Feili wanted her to invite Zhou Xuanji personally. Sure enough, none of the peerless geniuses of the Kunlun origin court were simple. "I want you dead." The black-armored great sovereign roared furiously. With a wave of his arms, Zhou Xuanji and Shen Yanqing felt an unstoppable force coming at them, directly pushing them out of the blue ocean. After coming to the spatial turbulence, Zhou Xuanji's qi and blood were boiling, and his face was slightly pale. The same was true for Shen Yanqing. She then waved her right hand backward, sending Hongqin Sovereign and Shen Yanqing behind her. Zhou Xuanji stared ahead. The blue ocean was surging violently as a giant shining with purple light slowly stood up from the stormy waves. He was holding two blades in his hands. It was the black-armored great sovereign from before. "Can you do it?" Zhou Xuanji asked in a deep voice. Wasn't Shen Yanqing very arrogant? Why was she driven out by the other party? Shen Yanqing curled her lips and said, "His own strength is nothing to be afraid of, but now that he has borrowed the power of the court realm, we can retreat. This court realm is stronger than I expected. Let's retreat first and come back next time." "Retreat?" Zhou Xuanji raised his brow, shook his head and said with a smile, "Don't worry, let me test his strength again." After saying this, he rushed toward the black-armored great sovereign without hesitation. The black-armored great sovereign was in a rage. Seeing Zhou Xuanji rushing over, he immediately raised his two blades and slashed down with unparalleled momentum. Boom! The thousand-hand sword Buddha rose from Zhou Xuanji's body. Its 1,000 arms drew a circle as its palms clamped the two blades in succession. Zhou Xuanji followed up with a slash. The Life and Death Emperor sword and the Soul Kunlun sword flew out of his hands, transforming into two giant dragons that roared and charged. The dragon's roar echoed in the space-time turbulence as the two dragons pierced the black-armored great sovereign's chest. Shen Yanqing was stunned. This guy can still hurt the other party? However, the black-armored great sovereign ignored the hole in his chest. His two blades crushed the thousand-hand sword Buddha and slashed at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji moved away from the space-time turbulence and came to the dark plane on the other side of the space-time turbulence. Just as he was about to go back, the two giant blades appeared again. This time he had no time to dodge. Puff! He spurted out a mouthful of blood as his body broke through the plane wall and fell into the space-time turbulence. Shen Yanqing caught him and, at the same time, swept away Zhou Tanhua and Mortal Sovereign with a wave of her hand. Her speed was extremely fast, so fast that the black-armored great sovereign couldn't catch up with them. "Father, are you okay?" Zhou Tanhua asked nervously. Mortal Sovereign's eyes were also locked on Zhou Xuanji. He shook his head and said with a smile, "I'm fine, it's just a minor injury." He wiped the corner of his mouth and began to calm the boiling supreme divine power in his body. "Who told you to show off? Even I am afraid. You still dare to come?" Shen Yanqing said, curling her lips. Her tone was a little disappointed. This guy is too reckless. If it weren't for her, he would have died. Zhou Xuanji smiled but didn't answer. Even without Shen Yanqing's help, he was confident that he could escape. His physique was the absolute time realm. As long as he escaped into the absolute time realm, no matter how capable the other party was, they wouldn't be able to find him. Unless the other party also had the absolute time realm physique. "Didn't you say that you prey on great sovereigns? Why are you in such a sorry state this time?" Mortal Sovereign asked in doubt. She had heard Shen Yanqing bragging before. She didn't expect that the first time she witnessed Shen Yanqing's battle would be like this. Shen Yanqing curled her lips and said, "Those great sovereigns are either formed by rules or have left their own court realm. I rarely fight in the court realm." Her expression was ugly. This time she was indeed a little embarrassed. "Then why are you fighting in the court realm this time?" Zhou Xuanji asked curiously. "Is it not as simple as hunting great sovereigns?" Shen Yanqing hesitated for a moment before she sighed and said, "It's for the ancient life lamp. I found out that this lamp fell into the Fang court realm. I want to get it. Don't tell anyone about this. Don't mention it in front of my revered master." "Ancient life lamp?" Zhou Xuanji and the other two were puzzled. "What kind of artifact is that?" The ancient life lamp is a supreme treasure that has been around for countless years. It can freeze time and space, absorb the souls of great sovereigns and even reverse karma. It is definitely a supreme treasure for battle, Shen Yanqing said with a yearning look. Chapter 897. Ancient Life Lamp. Zhou Xuanji remembered this name. A treasure that could make Shen Yanqing so eager must be extraordinary. If he has this treasure, why didn't he use it? Mortal Sovereign asked in surprise. Zhou Xuanji only used the power of the court realm. If he really had the ancient life lamp, how could he be so embarrassed? He could have just used the ancient life lamp to defeat the enemy. Shen Yanqing curled her lips and said, "How can he conquer the ancient life lamp? So this treasure doesn't belong to him but to me. It's destined." In the end, she smiled proudly as if she had already grasped the ancient life lamp. She was in high spirits. "Are we going back now?" Zhou Tanhua asked. He had a look of wanting to say more. After traveling for so long, they ended up going back with their tails between their legs? This was completely different from what he had imagined. Shen Yanqing rolled her eyes at him and said, "What? You want to go back?" Zhou Tanhua chuckled and shut his mouth. "Let's go back and continue to cultivate in seclusion. Someone didn't even gather enough intelligence and wanted to hunt." What a slap in the face. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said with a smile. These words pierced Shen Yanqing's heart like a knife. She glared at Zhou Xuanji with hatred but didn't quibble. In today's battle, she had indeed underestimated the strength of the other court realm. In the sea of clouds, a tall tower was surrounded by white clouds. At the top of the tower, black-armored great sovereign sat on the ground. He took off his black armor. His whole body was covered in blood. His face became even more ferocious as he gnashed his teeth and said, "Just you wait, I will definitely take revenge." He rarely went out in his own court realm. Today he had encountered such a disaster. Even if he had driven away the enemy, his anger still couldn't be appeased. He took a deep breath and turned to look at a black lamp behind him. Ancient life lamp. This lamp was 6 feet tall. Its base was slender and its body was transparent. It was burning with 7 colored flames. At the top was a flower leaf that looked like a scorched leaf. It looked a little eerie. Black-armored great sovereign put his palms together and said piously, "Ancient life lamp, please give me the power to kill those two. Give me the intuition to find them." He repeated the words over and over. After a while, all of a sudden the ancient life lamp trembled violently, and wisps of charred smoke rose from it, coiling around the black-armored great sovereign like ghosts. He wasn't afraid. Instead he was excited. Meanwhile, Zhou Xuanji and Shen Yanqing, who were traveling through the spatial turbulence, frowned at the same time. The two of them looked at each other and saw the fear in each other's eyes. In that instant they felt inexplicably uneasy and even suffocated. "What happened?" Zhou Xuanji asked in a low voice with a sharp look in his eyes. He instinctively spread out his divine sense in all directions. Shen Yanqing shook her head and looked around vigilantly. Zhou Tanhua and Supremacy Hong Chen tensed up. They also looked around to guard against sneak attacks. The atmosphere became silent. After a long while, "Is there a problem?" Zhou Tanhua couldn't help but ask. He was an Origin Fusion Divine Lord, and his spirit sense was also very strong. How could he not sense the danger? Zhou Xuanji said, "It's nothing, let's continue." Shen Yanqing nodded, and the supreme divine power that wrapped around everyone suddenly accelerated, quickly taking them and disappearing at the end of time and space. A few months later, they returned to the mountain range. Zhou Xuanji returned to the blessed grotto heavens to cultivate in seclusion. Shen Yanqing went to see Jiang Feili. Zhou Tanhua and Supremacy Hong Chen cultivated separately. After meditating, Zhou Xuanji took out the opportunity stone and continued refining it. The previous battle had stimulated him. This time, he must break through to the great sovereign of the second court. On the other side, in the Taoist temple, Jiang Feili frowned as he stared at Shen Yanqing and said in a deep voice, "What did you provoke? Do you know what you are entangled by now? You have no way to escape." His tone was filled with anger, which made Shen Yanqing raise her brow. Could it be? Shen Yanqing thought of a possibility. A chill immediately welled up in her heart. She subconsciously murmured, "Ancient life lamp?" As soon as she said this, Jiang Feili suddenly stood up. "What? You encountered the ancient life lamp? Why didn't you tell me first?" Jiang Feili angrily asked. He was so angry that his beard was trembling. The ancient life lamp is a supreme treasure, but it's also an evil treasure. Are you coveting its ability to distort time and space? Faced with Jiang Feili's questioning, Shen Yanqing's face was livid. She had underestimated the ancient life lamp. This is troublesome. You really can't do anything right, but you're good at spoiling things. Jiang Feili pointed at Shen Yinxing and kept cursing. He had originally planned to stop the 9 absolutes Qilin, but now the ancient honorable life lamp had suddenly appeared. He began to pace back and forth with his hands behind his back. He gritted his teeth and said, "The threat of the ancient life lamp is no less than the 9 absolutes of the Qilin." Shen Yinxing frowned. She also knew this, so she wanted to get the honored life ancient lamp. They didn't expect to be cursed by the ancient sovereign fate lamp before they even saw it. Her heart sank to the bottom of the pit. Seeing her silence, Jiang Feili sighed. "Forget it. From now on you can't leave this place." "Did you hear that?" Jiang Feili roared furiously. He was like a completely different person from before. Shen Yinxing was not aggrieved, nor was she afraid. She just nodded with a gloomy face. Then she turned around and walked out of the temple. After the gate of the Taoist temple was closed, she could still hear her master's sigh. She suddenly revealed a strange smile, and a trace of ruthlessness flashed in her eyes. 300 years later, Zhou Xuanji began breaking through to the great sovereign of the 2 courts. But before he broke through, Jiang Feili suddenly sent him a telepathic message, asking him to go to the Taoist temple. Although Zhou Xuanji was in a hurry to break through, he had to give Jiang Feili face. He quickly came to the Taoist temple. "Greetings, senior," Zhou Xuanji bowed. Looking at Jiang Feili again, he found that Jiang Feili's expression was a little heavy. He was no longer as calm as he used to be. Jiang Feili said, "You and Yinxing have been cursed by the ancient life lamp." Zhou Xuanji frowned. It turned out that the uneasiness he felt when he came back was real. "Do you know the origin of the ancient life lamp?" Jiang Feili asked. And before Zhou Xuanji could answer, he began to talk. "A long time ago there was an evil god. He wanted to devour all the courts and destroy everything so that reality would no longer exist. He wanted to live alone and enjoy eternal loneliness. The ancient life lamp was transformed by that evil god. He was defeated during the primeval sovereign's era, leaving only the ancient life lamp behind. But at the end of the primeval sovereign's era, someone stole the ancient life lamp. Rumor has it that the evil god was released. After that, history was erased until today. The evil god's power of the ancient life lamp cannot be resisted by great sovereigns. You are now equivalent to being cursed by that evil god. Do you understand the seriousness of the matter?" After speaking, he stared at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, "Then what do you want me to do next?" The primeval sovereign's era was extremely distant, even older than the sovereign heaven. "Abandon your body and reincarnate," Jiang Feili said word by word, staring at Zhou Xuanji. Chapter 898. Impossible. Zhou Xuanji flatly refused. He had gone through so many hardships to reach this step. How could he recultivate? Moreover, if he gave up his cultivation, what should he do if his family was in danger again? So what if it was the evil god? He was facing the ancient life lamp, not the evil god himself. Jiang Feili's face turned gloomy when he heard this. Zhou Xuanji was an important part of his plan. He couldn't afford to fail. If Zhou Xuanji was killed by the ancient life lamp before he could stop the Qilin 9 absolutes, then his plan would be ruined. Thinking of this, his eyes turned sharp. His aura suddenly erupted, enveloping Zhou Xuanji. In this regard, Zhou Xuanji held his head high and puffed out his chest. Facing Jiang Feili's aura head-on, he wasn't afraid at all. He wasn't Jiang Feili's disciple, nor was he a puppet. He didn't force the ancient life lamp. He didn't fulfill Shen Yinxing's promise. Why should he reincarnate and recultivate? For his own good? But his tone was completely different. It was more like coercion. The two stared at each other, giving each other tit for tat. After 3 breaths, Jiang Feili's aura suddenly dissipated. The tense atmosphere also disappeared. "Then you should cultivate well and rely on yourself to survive this tribulation. Go down." Jiang Feili flicked his sleeves and turned around. His tone was very impolite. Zhou Xuanji expressionlessly cupped his hands, bowed and left. After walking out of the temple, Zhou Xuanji flew toward Shen Yinxing's blessed grotto heaven. After returning to the vast world, he was stopped by Shen Yinxing. Shen Yinxing raised her right hand and sealed the blessed grotto heaven. She said with a faint smile, "Your face is so ugly. Did my revered master make things difficult for you?" Zhou Xuanji shook his head and laughed. He naturally couldn't slander her revered master in front of her. "Ignore him, I won't let the ancient life lamp hurt you," Shen Yinxing comforted. Her tone became excited as she clenched her fists and said, I will control the ancient life lamp. When the time comes, I will help you destroy the Qilin 9 absolutes. Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes and said unhappily, protect yourself first. Even your revered master can't do anything about it. You still want to control it? Can you wake up? After that, he bypassed Shen Yanxing and prepared to go back to continue his breakthrough. Only by becoming stronger would he be able to bring him a sense of security. Shen Yanxing's eyes widened. She grabbed his hand, pulled him and snorted, shall we make a bet? Zhou Xuanji looked back at her and said, not coming. This girl was too conceited. She didn't even feel the slightest bit of panic. Shen Yanxing said softly, let me tell you a secret. I have the means to control the ancient life lamp. In addition, you have to be afraid of my master. He is not as peaceful as he looks. He must have some ulterior motive for taking you in. Zhou Xuanji was surprised. He didn't expect Shen Yanxing to have such an evaluation of his master. He had thought that the master and disciple had a good relationship. Shen Yanxing understood the look in his eyes and snorted coldly, I do respect him, but it doesn't mean that I'm stupid. Take your opportunity stones as an example. He is reluctant to give me so many opportunity stones. Why do I have to hunt great supreme masters everywhere? It's because he has reservations about me. If I'm not mistaken, the mortal god is also one of the chess pieces in his plan. Letting my sister come here is his idea. Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought. It seemed that Jiang Feili's goal wasn't just to stop the Qilin 9 absolutes. This was a very big game of chess. This plan had begun a long time ago when he took in Shen Yanxing. Shen Yanxing leaned in front of him and whispered in his ear, Zhou Xuanji, don't trust anyone in this endless universe. The endless universe is not as beautiful as it seems on the surface. Maybe one day I will also attack you for my opportunity. She took a step back and smiled charmingly at Zhou Xuanji before disappearing. Zhou Xuanji didn't think too much about it. He had heard such words too many times. Right now, all he could think about was breaking through as soon as possible. The breakthrough of each court realm, in addition to the accumulation of quantity, also needed to be guided to create a new dimension in the depths of one's soul. Unlike opening a small world, the court realm was boundless and could accommodate countless universes. It required an extremely stable soul strength and complicated operation of rules. Fortunately, he had Little Sovereign. Little Sovereign could give him guidance when he broke through. This also proved that Little Sovereign had at least the cultivation of a second court Great Sovereign. Before this, Zhou Xuanji thought that he had just entered the Great Sovereign realm and was even weaker than an ordinary Great Sovereign. But now it seemed that the name Little Sovereign was an insult to this guy. In the blink of an eye, another 100 years passed. Under the guidance of Little Sovereign, Zhou Xuanji successfully broke through to the second court Great Sovereign. His supreme divine power had undergone a qualitative change, shaking the entire blessed grotto heavens. In front of a waterfall, Shen Yanxing looked up and saw waves rippling in the sky like waves. What is this guy's physique? How can he absorb so quickly? Shen Yanxing furrowed her brow. She suddenly felt that she couldn't see through Zhou Xuanji. She knew about the existence of Little Sovereign. But even with the guidance of a powerful expert, it was impossible for him to absorb so quickly. At the same time, in the temple, Jiang Feili opened his eyes. He cried out in surprise, strange, this kid? He knew that Zhou Xuanji's aptitude was very good, but he didn't expect it to be so outrageous. Doesn't this mean that if I give this kid more opportunity stones, he can continue to break through? And in a short time. Thinking of this, Jiang Feili pinched his fingers to calculate Zhou Xuanji's origin. However, no matter how he calculated, he could only calculate Zhou Xuanji's past. He felt that something was wrong. Zhou Xuanji's fate was a little vague, as if it had been pieced together. What the hell is going on? Jiang Feili mumbled to himself. Suddenly, a light shadow appeared behind him. The light shadow said with a mocking smile, why? Did you feel the change? Jiang Feili nodded with a solemn expression. Give up on him, he is still cursed by the ancient life lamp. Be careful not to burn yourself playing with fire. The light shadow shook his head and said with a smile. Jiang Feili fell into silence and fell into deep thought. The light shadow didn't disturb him and let him think alone. After a long while, Jiang Feili said softly, forget it, don't need him. The light shadow asked in a cold voice, you want me to kill him directly? Jiang Feili shook his head. His eyes flickered with a terrifying cold light. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji was still consolidating his cultivation. He didn't know that a killing intent was coming. Very good. If you can go to the Eternal God realm, it will be great. The extermination immortal physique can absolutely grow wildly there. Like I said, you have the potential to surpass the previous sovereigns of the Kunlun origin court. Little sovereign's voice resounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind. His words were full of praise. Zhou Xuanji could be said to be lucky to obtain the extermination immortal physique. But wasn't it predestined for him to have such luck? Since ancient times, he wasn't the first person with the extermination immortal physique. But very few people with the extermination immortal physique could grow to his level. Just when Zhou Xuanji was about to answer Little Sovereign, Shen Yinxing suddenly appeared in front of him and said in a low voice, "Hurry up! Your trouble is coming." Chapter 899. What trouble? Zhou Xuanji looked up at Shen Yinxing and asked in doubt. He immediately had an answer in his heart. Jiang Feili. That old thing couldn't sit still anymore. Shen Yinxing said in a deep voice, "My master wants to make a move against you. When you step out of this world, it will be the time of your death. Don't look at how you have broken through to the second court Grand Supreme. Even if you break through to the 3 courts, you are still not his match." Zhou Xuanji asked with a smile that did not seem like a smile, "If so, how can I escape? I'm right under his nose." It seemed that Shen Yinxing already had a countermeasure. Could it be that there was a special and hidden teleportation formation in this blessed enclave? Get ready. I'll bring your wife and son in." Shen Yinxing snorted coldly and disappeared. Zhou Xuanji smiled before closing his eyes and continuing to consolidate his sovereign divine power. The Lesser Supreme Sword, the Life and Death Emperor Sword, and the Soul Kunlun Sword floated around him, rotating and protecting him. Not long after, Shen Yinxing, Mortal Sovereign, and Zhou Tanhua appeared in front of Zhou Xuanji. Seeing that Zhou Xuanji was still cultivating, Shen Yinxing became angry. She rebuked, "Aren't you afraid of death?" Having heard this, Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and stood up slowly. "Let's go," he said calmly. Zhou Tanhua asked excitedly, "Father, have you broken through again?" He had a look of worship on his face. After being outside the court for so long, he had some understanding of Grand Supremes. How long had it been? His father, who had just broken through to become a first court exalt, had actually broken through again. At this rate, Zhou Xuanji would soon surpass Jiang Feili. "Let's stop chatting. Follow me." With a wave of her right hand, Shen Yinxing took Zhou Xuanji and the other 2 away. She turned into a streak of red light and flew towards the horizon, directly entering the waterfall between the mountains. In the next moment they arrived at the space-time tunnel. "How can you be so guarded against your own master?" Zhou Xuanji teased, making Shen Yinxing roll her eyes. Ottar Crimson Dust asked curiously, "Where are we going next? Kunlun Origin Court?" Shen Yinxing shook her head. She looked ahead and moved forward at full speed. "My revered teacher's target is Zhou Xuanji. Even if he escapes back to the Kunlun Origin Court, he can still find Zhou Xuanji." Shen Yinxing smiled coldly. The 3 of them were visibly moved when they heard this. They looked at her in surprise, wondering what she was going to do. "Isn't it good to let my master fight with the 9 absolutes of the Kirin? Don't worry, we're not going to kill our way into the Myriad Domain Demon Lair. Instead, we're going to the Thunder League near the Myriad Domain Demon Lair." Shen Yinxing chuckled. When she mentioned the Thunder League, her eyes flashed with a hint of heat. Zhou Tanhua asked curiously, "What is the Thunder Alliance?" Shen Yinxing did not hide anything and introduced the origin of the Thunder League to them. In the boundless universe, there were not only independent planes and realms. There were also vast domains that were countless times larger than the Kunlun cosmos. There were many living beings hidden in these domains. Where there were many living beings, it was inevitable that there would be conflicts, and the formation of forces was also inevitable. The Thunder Alliance was one of them. It was one of the giants near the Myriad Domain Demon Lair. It was very open and did not have many requirements. It was an extremely famous holy land for cultivation and was also a place where resources gathered. Shen Yinxing wanted to collect more opportunity stones for Zhou Xuanji and use the power of the Thunder Alliance to deter Jiang Feili. Fighting was forbidden in the Thunder Alliance. This was also the biggest reason why the Thunder Alliance could become a holy land. "Your revered master won't retaliate against the Kunlun Origin Court, right?" Zhou Xuanji asked with a frown. He had already left the Kunlun Origin Court for some time. He wanted to go back and have a look after breaking through. Shen Yinxing hesitated and said, "I don't think so." Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji glared at her and said, "Let's go back to the Kunlun Origin Court." Shen Yinxing became angry and rebuked, "Is the Kunlun Origin Court so important? Can't you live? Don't you want to part with your other 2 wives? After playing for so many years, aren't you tired of it? I will find you more wives in the future." Zhou Xuanji frowned and said in a deep voice, "You are humiliating me." He directly used the sword fusion technique. His aura exploded, breaking through Xin Yanqing's sovereign divine power. Zhou Tanhua and Hong Qin's sovereign's expressions changed drastically. Both of them felt great pressure. Even their souls were trembling. Then let's go back to the Kunlun origin court. When my revered master finds trouble with you, don't expect me to help. Xin Yanqing said with a cold snort. With a shake of her shoulder, she suppressed Zhou Xuanji's aura. Her sovereign divine power once again wrapped around them, taking them in a different direction. The atmosphere was silent. No one spoke anymore. Supreme Crimson Dust closed his eyes and focused on his cultivation. Seeing this, Zhou Tanhua also followed suit and cultivated. Xin Yanqing glanced back at Zhou Xuanji with resentment in her eyes. She asked through voice transmission, "What's wrong? Are you so narrow-minded? I risked defending my revered master to save you. Can't I make a joke?" Zhou Xuanji looked at her coldly and replied, "Some things can't be joked about." Xin Yanqing curled her lips. Hearing this, she became even angrier. However, no matter how angry she was, Zhou Xuanji didn't care about her. She was helpless. In the dark domain, the dark ship of the Qilin 9 Absolutes was slowly moving forward. 9 figures were standing on the deck. Among them was the Qilin demon. All of them were wearing black robes and looking straight ahead. Most of their faces couldn't be seen. They were like shadows. The myriad domain devil lair is just ahead. Are you ready? Of course, the sovereign heaven is waiting for us. We have to be careful of the Thunder Alliance and Yen Alliance. They are nearby and might disturb us. Don't worry, they won't dare. I've captured the heirs of many of their higher-ups. They won't start a war. It's this kind of trick again. Haven't you suffered enough? You've forced countless great supremes to perish together with you. The 9 absolutes of the Qilin began to discuss, all of them appearing calm and collected. They were determined to succeed in the following plan. The Qilin demon looked at the man in the lead and whispered, "Big brother, I have a bad feeling about this. There was news about the ancient honored life lamp not long ago. Will it affect our plan?" The ancient life lamp. The moment this name came out, the other Qilin 7 absolutes fell silent. The leader of the Qilin 9 absolutes was called Qilin Ancient Desolation. This name represented a nightmare in the boundless universe. Facing the reminder of the Qilin Enchantress, the Qilin Ancient Desolation shook his head and smiled. "I know where the ancient life lamp is. It is being held by an idiot and will not cause any trouble for the time being." Idiot? The others could not help but be curious. Who was the Qilin Ancient Desolate talking about? Just as they were about to ask, a violent aura attacked from the front. A dazzling light engulfed the darkness, as if it was going to swallow the giant ship. I finally met you reptiles." A cold snort filled with killing intent was heard, causing the faces of the 9 absolutes to darken. The other party actually dared to call them reptiles. I was wondering who it was. So it's the martial dragon ape. When did you climb out of the coffin? The Qilin demon laughed contemptuously. As she spoke, she took out a blood-colored curved blade from her sleeve. Chapter 900. Qilin 9 Absolutes, today I will destroy all of you. The martial dragon ape sovereign snorted coldly. The bright light in front of him became even more intense, illuminating the entire universe like the sun was approaching. Whoosh! The sound of something tearing through the air rang out, and countless black arrows of light shot forth, each of them over 1,000 feet in diameter, bombarding the giant ship with an unstoppable force. The 9 absolutes of the Qilin disappeared from the deck at the same time. They turned into 9 huge and ferocious black shadows and rushed forward. Bang! Terrifying forces clashed together, directly shattering this universe domain. Within the space-time tunnel, Xin Yanqing controlled her sovereign divine power to move forward. Zhou Xuanji, who was meditating behind her, suddenly opened his eyes. He frowned and murmured, "This feeling is..." Xin Yanqing looked back at him. Zhou Tanhua and Mortal Sovereign also opened their eyes and looked at Zhou Xuanji in surprise. "It's nothing, I just suddenly felt a bit uneasy as if something bad had happened," Zhou Xuanji said, shaking his head. He trusted his intuition. Something must have happened. Or perhaps something was about to happen. He took a deep breath and said, "Can you go faster?" Xin Yanqing rolled her eyes. She was already moving forward at full speed. How could she go any faster? "It won't be long before we reach the Kunlun origin court. Don't worry." She turned her head and snorted contemptuously. It was really easy to lose one's mind when it came to love. Zhou Xuanji was usually so calm, but whenever he thought about his family he would always be filled with worry, which made her feel disdain. The four of them continued forward. About 10 days passed. They finally arrived at the Kunlun Origin Court. Zhou Xuanji heaved a sigh of relief. Nothing had happened to the Kunlun Origin Court. Jiang Shui, Zhou Shaoxian, and the Emperor Sword Divine Range were still alive and well. All the divine ranges in the Origin Court were also fulfilling their duties, urging all living beings to cultivate diligently. There were no large-scale wars and everything seemed so harmonious. Zhou Xuanji returned to the Sovereign Divine Range, while Zhou Tanhua went to the Emperor Sword Divine Range. Mortal Sovereign took Shen Yanxing back to the mortal plane to rest. After entering the Supreme Palace, Zhou Xuanji created some outer-of-soul doppelgangers and moved them out of the Kunlun Origin Court to guard the various places. If there was an enemy attack, Zhou Xuanji would be able to detect it immediately. He took out the Lesser Supreme Sword and communicated with Little Supreme Sword. Jiang Feili, what is this person planning? Could it be that he also wants to obtain the Cardinal Heaven? Little Sovereign touched his chin and frowned, lost in thought. Zhou Xuanji contemplated as he channeled his energy technique. He could not understand why Jiang Feili wanted to deal with him. There was no hatred between the two of them, and they had a common enemy, the Qilin 9 Absolutes. There was no reason for them to kill him. Just because he didn't agree to reincarnate? Myriad Domain Demon Lair. 9 Ultimate Qilin. Cardinal Heaven and the Ancient Life Lamp. Little Sovereign thought hard and his brows were almost knitted together. He suddenly thought of something, opened his eyes and cried out in surprise, I understand. You are the Sovereign of the Kunlun Origin Court, and his goal is the Cardinal Heaven Realm. You might become a variable because you already know that his attention is on the Cardinal Heaven Realm. Even if you don't know his true identity, you will still be a potential threat. He clapped his hands in realization. Zhou Xuanji was still frowning and asked, what relationship do I have with sovereign heavenly beings? Could it be that I can attract Cardinal Heaven experts and make them work for me? Even so, as long as Jiang Feili did not target him, he would not let a Cardinal Heaven expert deal with Jiang Feili. Or is there a deeper reason? He wants the Cardinal Heaven and so does the 9 Ultimate Qilin. That's why he wants you to join his plan. When the Cardinal Heaven is resurrected, this invincible sovereign will sense the aura of the younger generation. No matter what divine ability he encounters, the Cardinal Heaven will turn to you. As long as the plan succeeds, the 9 Ultimate Qilin will be led by the nose. He will then let you control the Cardinal Heaven to destroy the 9 Ultimate Qilin. After that, he will find an opportunity to kill you and replace you. After all, you are his disciple. But now your aptitude makes him afraid because this plan can't be carried out in a short period of time. If you're already a threat to him by the time the plan is carried out, then wouldn't it all be for naught? After Little Sovereign finished speaking, he started laughing. His laughter was extremely cold. Zhou Xuanji's eyes narrowed as he said, in other words, Jiang Feili will kill me at all costs. Otherwise, he won't feel at ease even if he controls the Cardinal Heaven? Moreover, he will even destroy the Kunlun Origin Court. Even Sovereign Wu Zhou might be harmed? This old thing is too terrifying. He looks so amiable, but I didn't expect him to be so vicious. Yes. Therefore, we must take the initiative and join forces with the previous sovereigns of the Kunlun Origin Court to come and help. Little Sovereign said in a deep voice. He used to be a sovereign. How could he tolerate outsiders destroying the Kunlun Origin Court? Zhou Xuanji's eyes lit up as he asked, you can contact the previous sovereigns? The corner of Little Sovereign's mouth rose as he replied, Virtuous Great Formation. The number 1 Great Formation of the Kunlun Origin Court. Every sovereign of a generation had the power of a sovereign in it. Zhou Xuanji also smiled. Very good. Jiang Feili, as long as you dare to come, you will die. In the darkness, Jiang Feili was flying forward on his flying sword. A light figure was floating behind him. Are you sure you want to chase him now? The light figure asked. After learning that Shen Yanxing had escaped with Zhou Xuanji's group, they were furious. Jiang Feili was searching for the whereabouts of the four. His potential is too great. If we don't get rid of him, he may become the next ancient genius or even the next Cardinal Heaven. Jiang Feili said in a soft voice. His eyes were solemn. Ever since Zhou Xuanji escaped, he had been feeling uneasy. Especially when he thought of Shen Yanxing, he felt even more uneasy. As he recalled some memories, a trace of fear flashed in his eyes. We will also destroy the Kunlun Origin Court while we are at it. At that time, we will pretend that it was the Qilin 9 Absolutes who did it. After all, the Qilin demon has been there, Jiang Feili said faintly. He had already made a plan after destroying the Kunlun origin court. As long as he found Zhou Xuanji, he believed that he could definitely kill him. The light figure said in a deep voice, "I always feel that something is wrong. That kid is very strange. He is very confident when facing you. It's fine if he is under your nose. But once he leaves, I'm afraid it won't be so easy to kill him. Don't worry, no one can save him. What's more, his backer is just the soul of Little Sovereign. There's nothing to fear," Jiang Feili said indifferently. The light figure sighed and no longer tried to persuade him. They continued moving forward. After 3 hours, suddenly a jade disc flew over from the front, spinning at high speed. Jiang Feili stretched out his hand and grabbed it. He took a closer look and exclaimed in surprise, "Is it the legendary White Universe plate? How did it appear here?" He raised his eyes and looked ahead. It was absolute darkness. He couldn't see anything clearly. "Jiang Feili, this treasure is for you. Do you want it?" A cold voice that sounded like a smile yet not a smile came. Jiang Feili's expression changed drastically when he heard this. Without saying a word, he turned around and fled. Chapter 901. Just as Jiang Feili was about to escape, a gigantic golden hand grabbed him from behind and pulled him into the palm of the hand. The light shadow on his body angrily rebuked, "Gu Tianlin, you have no hatred with us. What do you want to do?" Cold laughter came from behind the giant golden hand. "I heard that you want to target the Qilin 9 Absolutes. I also have the same intention. Let's cooperate. The White Universe plate is a greeting gift." Jiang Feili's expression turned gloomy. Flames ignited on his body, burning the giant golden hand to ashes. A terrifying and fierce aura erupted. Jiang Feili asked expressionlessly, "What hatred do you have with the Qilin 9 Absolutes?" He frowned. His heart was full of doubts. With Gu Tianlin's background, there was no need to be afraid of the Qilin 9 Absolutes. This guy could make the Qilin 9 Absolutes tremble with just a few words. "I just want to kill them, but my identity doesn't allow me to do it myself." Gu Tianlin's voice came again. His words were full of contempt. Jiang Feili pondered. He looked at the White Universe plate in his hand. His eyes turned cold as he said, "Okay. I promise you. But this White Universe plate alone is not enough." The light shadow behind him became anxious. It was about to speak when it was absorbed into his body. "Okay, when the Myriad Domain Devil Lair begins, I will send my mount to help you." "That's it." Gu Tianlin agreed. As his voice fell, the strong light around him disappeared. Jiang Feili's face lit up when he heard this. "Jade-eyed Yama Taotai. Very good." He muttered to himself. He was in high spirits. Kunlun Origin Court, Supreme Plane. Boom. A pillar of light rose from within the Supreme Palace and rushed into the sky, causing huge waves to appear in the sky. Zhou Xuanji walked out of the hall and looked up. Little Sovereign was floating behind him, looking up. At this time, Xin Yanqing suddenly appeared in front of them. She raised her head and asked in surprise, "What kind of formation is this? What do you want to do?" She furrowed her brows as a trace of fear flashed in her eyes. "Virtuous Great Formation, have you heard of it, little doll?" Little Sovereign smiled proudly. Obviously, he still held a grudge against Xin Yanqing for slapping him. Therefore, he would always make fun of Xin Yanqing whenever he got the chance. Xin Yanqing frowned even more. She knew nothing about the virtuous formation, so she couldn't help but ask curiously, "Are you going to deal with my master?" Zhou Xuanji and Little Sovereign nodded tacitly at the same frequency. "What is the secret behind this formation?" she asked. "Nothing, I just want to maximize the power of the Kunlun Origin Court." Little Sovereign replied casually. Zhou Xuanji was expressionless, but he really wanted to laugh. It seemed that Little Sovereign was still wary of Xin Yanqing. He didn't point it out. What if Xin Yanqing found out the truth and tipped off Jiang Feili? If it were Zhou Xuanji, he would definitely do this to repay his teacher. Xin Yanqing shook her head and said, "Even if the power of the Kunlun Origin Court reaches its peak, it will not be my master's opponent. You know nothing about his strength." Little Sovereign looked at her contemptuously and smiled without saying a word. The three of them stopped talking and continued to look up at the virtuous display formation. In the dark void, there was a small island floating. There was only a crooked old tree on the island. A white-haired man was sitting on the ground under the tree. He was dragging a jade zither between his legs. He had a handsome face and dark blue eyes that looked like 2 stars. He suddenly raised his eyes and looked into the distance. He gently raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "Interesting, someone in the Kunlun Origin Court is asking for help." Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji. He has reached the great sovereign of two courts in just over 2,000 years old. It seems that our Kunlun origin court is going to produce another peerless genius. He thought for a moment before slowly getting up. Forget it, let's go back and take a look. After so many years, there are still people who dare to bully our Kunlun origin court. On the other side, in an underground cave that was dripping with water, the faint sound of the wind continued. Sharp thorns emerged from the ground. On one of the huge thorns, a burly man with bare arms was sitting cross-legged. The surface of his body was covered with silver needles. They were trembling slightly as if the surrounding space was twisting. He suddenly opened his eyes, flames spewing from them as he let out a cold snort. Without hesitation he disappeared into thin air. At the same time, in various parts of the endless universe, many sovereigns who were cultivating opened their eyes at the same time. Some left angrily, some approached out of curiosity, and many continued to cultivate in disdain. After 7 days, Zhou Xuanji, who was in the Supreme Palace, suddenly opened his eyes. He said softly, "He's here." He directly moved out of the Kunlun origin court and came into the darkness. The Life and Death Emperor Sword, Lesser Supreme Sword, and Soul Kunlun Sword were floating behind him, rotating separately. He directly mobilized the power of the Kunlun origin court and cast the sword fusion technique. White light burst out from his body. His aura was powerful to the limit. Shen Yanxing appeared beside him and fixed her eyes on him. She saw Jiang Feili flying over on his sword. He had his hands behind his waist and an indifferent look on his face. He saw Zhou Xuanji and Zhou Xuanji from afar. He deliberately slowed down and said, "Zhou Xuanji, come here. Don't force me to destroy the Kunlun origin court." Zhou Xuanji, holding the Soul Kunlun sword, said with a smile, "I'm afraid it's not enough." He was anxious in his heart. In such a short time, those sovereigns might not be able to catch up. But now he had to face Jiang Feili. "You are too conceited. The power of the Kunlun origin court isn't as strong as you think," Jiang Feili said calmly as he continued to charge towards Zhou Xuanji. Shen Yanxing shouted, "Master, you really want to kill him?" Jiang Feili remained indifferent, not even answering her. Countless sword shadows appeared out of thin air, enveloping Jiang Feili. In an instant, all of them rained down like a torrential downpour, drowning Jiang Feili. A barrier of light appeared around Jiang Feili's body, blocking all the sword shadows. "Stop." Right at this moment, an explosive shout sounded out. Sovereign Wu Zhou turned into a beam of intense light and dashed over. He landed before Zhou Xuanji in an instant. He turned to look at Jiang Feili and said solemnly, "Jiang Feili, I'm afraid you're tired of living." Knowing that Jiang Feili wanted to deal with Zhou Xuanji and the Kunlun origin court for the sake of Cardinal Heaven, Sovereign Wu Zhou was infuriated. He already felt guilty towards the Kunlun origin court, so how could he tolerate others destroying the Kunlun origin court? "Wu Zhou, you came at the right time," Jiang Feili said with a sneer. A beam of light rose from behind him, spreading its arms and turning into a terrifying phoenix with a wingspan of millions of meters. It wrapped Zhou Xuanji's group of 3 with its wings. Little Sovereign flew out from the blade and teased, "Junior, can you do it?" Sovereign Wu Zhou glanced at him in surprise and replied, "No, his cultivation is far beyond mine." Zhou Xuanji furrowed his brow. With the support of the Kunlun origin court, he also felt that Sovereign Wu Zhou wasn't that strong. At least, he didn't give him the feeling that he couldn't defeat him. Jiang Feili walked towards Zhou Xuanji and Sovereign Wu Zhou. His eyes were cold as he said faintly, "So, you called for reinforcements. Unfortunately, you overestimated the strength of your reinforcements." Just as he finished speaking, the sound of a zither suddenly rang out. Chapter 902. Jiang Feili's expression changed drastically as he turned around. Zhou Xuanji, Supreme Wu Zhou, Shen Yanxing, and Little Sovereign also turned their heads. The sound of the zither was bleak, like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves. There was also the sound of a woman crying bitterly, endless resentment mixed with killing intent. "What is this?" Audark Wu Zhou frowned. This zither music actually caused his soul to shudder. Not only him but the others also felt the same way. Even Jiang Feili was the same. How is this possible? Why would he come? Could it be that he predicted this? Impossible. I clearly deceived the fate of the Kunlun origin court. Jiang Feili's body trembled, his face filled with fear. Seeing him lose his composure, Zhou Xuanji was delighted. Little Sovereign laughed even more wildly, "Old bastard. Are you afraid now? Do you think my Kunlun origin court can be destroyed by a lowly person like you?" He turned his head to look in the direction of the zither and called out, "Grandmaster, help me." Ancestor. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Who was the ancestral master of Little Supreme Zun? Was he also a supreme of the Kunlun origin court? Little fellow, how did you end up like this? A chuckle drifted over, its tone filled with ridicule. Little Sovereign was embarrassed and didn't know how to answer. Jiang Feili turned around and cupped his fist towards the darkness, respectfully asking, "Senior Hong Qin, why have you come?" "I don't want to deal with the Kunlun origin court. I just want to capture this brat." Zhou Xuanji raised his brow and sneered. At this moment, no amount of quibbling would be of any use. He had already informed all the sages about Jiang Feili's plan through the Sage Manifestation Array. "Then stay here," Senior Hong Qin said in an overbearing manner, causing Jiang Feili's expression to turn even uglier. There was curiosity in Shen Yanqing's eyes. This was the first time she had seen her master so embarrassed and uneasy. Who was this Senior Hong Qin? The situation was instantly reversed. Supreme Wu Zhou rubbed his chin and clicked his tongue in wonder. Could it be the legendary Rainbow Qin Sage Monarch, who could destroy an entire court with a single pluck of his zither? Zhou Xuanji and Shen Yanqing were speechless. The ancestor of the Little Supreme Venerables was this powerful? Zhou Xuanji suddenly remembered that he had seen the legend of Rainbow Qin Saint Lord before. It was just that in the Kunlun origin court's legends, Rainbow Qin Saint Lord was considered to be a myth, and there were very few records about him. The most detailed record was that he had saved the Kunlun origin court. He had played the zither with both hands, and with a single song he had pulled the destroyed Kunlun origin court back to its former glory. He had reversed time and space, pulled back karma, and restored everything that had been destroyed. This method made him the savior of the world. Supreme Wu Zhou's divine ability was very similar to that of Hong Qin Sage Monarch. "Hong Qin Saint Monarch, you disregarded your seniority and targeted us. Are you not afraid of karma?" The light figure above Jiang Feili's head rebuked angrily. Facing the Rainbow Qin Sacred Monarch, he actually didn't feel much fear. Zhou Xuanji and the others looked at this figure of light in curiosity. This guy actually has an independent consciousness? They thought that the light was a manifestation of Jiang Feili's thaumaturgy. Judging from his tone, he was even more arrogant than Jiang Feili. "Humph, since you want to talk about seniority, then I'll kill you." A powerful and domineering voice rang out, startling everyone into turning their heads to look in another direction. A raging flame suddenly appeared in the darkness in that direction. It was like a brilliant flower suddenly blooming, rapidly expanding. Jiang Feili panicked and cried out in alarm, "Li Yingyu, why are you here?" Supreme Wu Zhou and Shen Yanqing were also shocked. It was as if they had heard something incredible. Zhou Xuanji asked Little Sovereign, "Who is Li Yingyu?" Little Sovereign had a complicated look on his face as he replied, "A junior. I didn't expect him to become a sovereign. No wonder he didn't put me in his eyes back then. At that time I was the sovereign. I liked to pick geniuses. One time I met him. He threatened to surpass me and even dared to attack me. At that time the technique ancestor wanted me to execute him, but I didn't do so. I just banished him to some lost land to test him. After that, I didn't hear any news about him until I left the Kunlun origin court." Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. In this case Li Yingyu might be their enemy. Shen Yanqing looked at him and asked, "Why is Li Yingyu also here? What did you do?" She suddenly realized that the virtuous Great Formation wasn't used to fight against Jiang Feili but to ask for help. Otherwise, how could Hong Qin Saint Monarch and Li Yingyu come at the same time? "You want to destroy my Kunlun origin court? You are courting death and you still ask me why I am here. Sword Emperor, don't panic. With me here, even 10 of him can't kill you." Li Yingyu's overbearing voice came again as a majestic figure walked out of the huge fireball. His figure was extremely tall and sturdy. His arms were bare and his whole body was burning with flames. He was like an unparalleled god of fire walking through the air. With every step he took, a spark would appear under his feet. It was very spectacular. Upon seeing Li Yingyu, Jiang Feili's face turned extremely gloomy. The most important thing was that Hong Qin Saint Monarch's zither was still playing. It was as if he was playing music for his end, tormenting his heart. Ah! At this moment, another burst of arrogant laughter came. Everyone turned their heads and saw a pair of green eyes appear in the darkness. They had no pupils and were looking at them with an evil smile. "Yo, you old demon is also here. I almost forgot that the Kunlun origin court still has a sovereign like you," Li Yingyu said with a grin. He looked a little excited. His eyes were filled with fighting intent. Jiang Feili's face turned pale. He clenched his fists trying to keep calm. However, his nightmare had just begun. Waves of peerlessly powerful auras came from all directions, shaking the darkness. Almost in an instant, the dark void turned into day. Oh, you're all here? It seems like our Kunlun origin court is still of the same branch. After so many years, has the Kunlun origin court declined? Even cats and dogs dare to try and destroy the Kunlun origin court? How do you think we should kill him? One divine ability per person, let's see how much he can withstand. Zhou Xuanji and the others looked around. They couldn't tell how many sovereigns had descended. He fixed his eyes on it and took a deep breath. So many supremes. There were at least 20 of them. Shen Yinxing was silent, while Supreme Wu Zhou was extremely excited. TSK, there are so many acquaintances. Little Sovereign glanced around and said with interest. Jiang Feili's aura was suppressed. His forehead was covered in sweat as he tried to think of a way to escape. With so many Supremes of the Kunlun origin court, how could he contend against them all? Damn it. Why is it like this? Why did they all come to save Zhou Xuanji? The Kunlun origin court also had a disaster before. Why did they all come this time? Jiang Feili felt that he was going crazy. He had never encountered such a dangerous and embarrassing situation. The light shadow behind him was also frightened. He didn't dare to speak again. Jiang Feili, kneel. A voice filled with boundless saintly might descended from above, accompanied by a great pressure. Jiang Feili coughed up a mouthful of blood as he knelt in the void. The light shadow behind him was crushed and shattered, turning into countless light stars that drifted away without any resistance. Chapter 903. Seeing Jiang Feili kneeling down, Shen Yinxing frowned. In her heart, Jiang Feili was definitely a top-notch almighty being in the boundless universe. Why did she feel that her master was so weak now? No matter what, even if he died, he couldn't kneel. Jiang Feili, kowtow and apologize to the Kunlun origin court. You dare to target the Kunlun origin court? Are you worthy? I should imprint this scene with a spell so that everyone can see it. Ha ha ha, it's time to let the endless universe remember the might of the Kunlun origin court. The sage has personally come. Your death can be considered glorious. The autarchs mocked Jiang Feili to their heart's content. Aside from Li Yingyu, the other autarchs did not reveal their true forms, but their might continued to envelop this dark domain. Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji's blood boiled. No matter how stable his Dao heart was, he could not remain calm at this moment. The gathering of sages proved the foundation of the Kunlun origin court. The name of the origin of all living beings was not just for show. Under their gazes, Jiang Feili's body trembled in extreme fear. He suddenly thought of something. He flipped his right hand and the white universe plate appeared in his hand. I will never forget what happened today. He roared hoarsely. Then he suddenly crushed the white universe plate. The plate of white fate. This old man. Sovereign Wu Zhou's eyes widened as he exclaimed. But before he could finish speaking, Jiang Feili vanished into thin air. Zhou Xuanji frowned. If Jiang Feili escaped, there would be endless trouble in the future. After all, it would be very difficult to gather so many Supremes to help again. They could already be considered repaying the kindness of the Kunlun origin court by coming here once. I'm here and you still want to escape? The Rainbow Qin Saint's light laughter rang out, and the sound of the zither suddenly changed, becoming harsh and sharp. Jiang Feili's screams followed, and in the next second he reappeared at the place where he had just disappeared. At this moment he was covered in blood and his clothes were ragged. He was in an extremely sorry state. Supreme Wu Zhou let out a sigh of relief and sighed. The sage is invincible. Zhou Xuanji and Shen Yinxing were also shocked. None of them had seen what had happened, but it was precisely because of this that they were shocked. No matter what methods Jiang Feili used, he could not escape from Hong Qin Sage's eyes. Tiske, the sage's cultivation is truly unfathomable. In the current boundless universe, there aren't many who can stand shoulder to shoulder with the Saint Monarch. Senior is a senior indeed. Actually, we don't need to come. It's enough to have him. Jiang Feili is also a famous person, but it's a pity that he dared to find trouble with our Kunlun origin court. Does he really think that our descendants have no backing? His death is not to be regretted. The voices of the supreme martial artists rang out again. They were all in awe of Hong Qin's sacred monarch's strength. Li Yingyu appeared behind Jiang Feili in a single step. His right palm landed on the top of Jiang Feili's head, and a terrifying flame ignited on his palm. Jiang Feili didn't even have time to scream before he was burned into a puddle of blood and his soul turned into smoke. He had fallen. A great cultivator of a generation died just like that, and his countless years of cultivation vanished into thin air. The Kunlun Origin Court still has to rely on itself in the future. Current Overlord, please work hard. If you can come to the illusory divine realm in the future, you can look for me. The Rainbow Qin Saint's voice rang out. When his voice landed, the sound of the Guqin came to an abrupt halt. The sage left. He came without a trace and left without a trace. The other sovereigns also left one after another. Before leaving, they told Zhou Xuanji in the tone of a senior, hoping that he could lead the Kunlun Origin Court to prosperity and that such a crisis would not happen again in the future. From the beginning to the end, they did not show themselves. Li Yingyu smiled at Sovereign Wu Zhou, then transformed into flames and disappeared into the darkness. The calamity ended just like that, and the dark void returned to silence. Supreme Wu Zhou turned around and sighed. You guys really have some tricks up your sleeves. How did you contact me and the other Supremes through the virtuous manifestation formation? As a Supreme martial artist, this was the first time he knew that the virtuous manifestation formation could be used like this. Little Sovereign proudly smiled and said, "This is a magical ability that only the great sovereigns of the two courts can display. After all, ordinary great sovereigns can have the strength of the two courts after obtaining the power of the Kunlun Origin Court. If even the great sovereigns of the two courts can't resist this calamity, it means that the Kunlun Origin Court may really be in danger of destruction." Zhou Xuanji suddenly came to a realization. No wonder Little Sovereign didn't say anything before. Shen Yanxing had a complicated expression as she said, "The heritage of the Kunlun Origin Court is really amazing." She didn't feel too sad after witnessing her master's death. On the contrary, she had a strong interest in the Kunlun Origin Court. Of course, the Kunlun Origin Court is the origin of everything. Little Sovereign proudly stated. Although he had already fallen, his sense of responsibility and honor as a sovereign had always been there. Supreme Wu Zhou smiled. He then bowed to Little Sovereign and respectfully said, "Wu Zhou pays respect to Senior. This calamity is all thanks to Senior." Little Sovereign glanced at him and snorted, "You are really idle as a sovereign. But that's good. At least you gave him a chance." Supreme Wu Zhou immediately felt embarrassed after hearing this. He quickly changed the topic and asked Zhou Xuanji, "You said that the 9 absolutes of Qilin want to resurrect the cardinal heaven sovereigns. Do you want to join hands to go to the myriad domain devil nest and annihilate the 9 absolutes of Qilin?" When I first left the Kunlun Origin Court, the 9 absolutes of Qilin suppressed me a lot. He didn't hide his murderous aura at all. It seemed that he was also very embarrassed in front of the 9 absolutes of Qilin. Zhou Xuanji readily agreed without hesitation. "Very well, we will meet at the Thunder Alliance in the myriad domain devil nest. I will stay there. You can find me by mentioning my name," Supreme Wu Zhou said with a grin. After saying this, he turned into a beam of light and disappeared into the darkness in the blink of an eye. Zhou Xuanji turned around and returned to the Kunlun Origin Court with Little Sovereign and Shen Yanxing. Shen Yanxing sighed with emotion and said, "This time I have really opened my eyes. I have decided to stay in the Kunlun Origin Court. I want to see how many secrets are hidden in the Kunlun Origin Court." After saying this, she left alone. This girl is really heartless. She is indifferent to the death of her revered master. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said with a smile. Zhou Xuanji shook his head with a smile. He had always been helpless against Divine Star. Little Sovereign said meaningfully, "She is not heartless. On the contrary, she is not simple. Just now, I clearly felt that she was trying to suppress her aura. She is standing behind you. She is under your protection. Why would she hide her aura?" Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes upon hearing this. It was really unnecessary. Unless she was afraid of a sovereign of the Kunlun Origin Court. But so many sovereigns and no one mentioned her. What is the reason? Thinking of what she had said to him before, Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought. I have to be more wary of her in the future. I always feel that she is plotting something. At first, she pretended that she didn't know that she had a sister and didn't know you. But now she is so close to you. Something is really wrong, Little Sovereign reminded in a solemn tone. Zhou Xuanji nodded before entering the sovereign plane. As soon as he entered, he suddenly stopped as a figure appeared in front of him. His whole body was shining with light. Only his figure could be seen but not his face. Chapter 904. Who are you? Zhou Xuanji asked vigilantly. The sovereigns had just left, and a mysterious person had infiltrated the sovereign's plane. This meant that this person's cultivation was extraordinary. Otherwise he wouldn't have dared to appear at this juncture. The figure in the light smiled and said, "Zhou Xuanji, don't be nervous. I'm not your enemy." Zhou Xuanji frowned. This voice was so familiar, as though he had heard it before. "It seems like you really don't remember me." "That's right, you have already become a sovereign who dominates the Kunlun origin court. How could you remember your opponent from back then? However, we haven't become opponents yet." "What a pity," the other party continued with a smile, his tone filled with ridicule. As the light dissipated, a man wearing a noble golden robe appeared. His face was cold and the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. His eyes were like a king's, domineering and sharp. He wore a purple gold crown on his head, and he exuded a proud aura that looked down on all living things. Sunlight Emperor. Zhou Xuanji's pupils contracted. Why was this guy here? In the past, in the northern wilderness region, Sunlight Emperor had suppressed Xian Xianghua for thousands of years and dominated the first throne in the world. When the boundless world attacked, in order to obtain the heavenly Lost Stone, Sunlight Emperor was sucked into the spacetime turbulence and disappeared. After so many years, Zhou Xuanji had thought that he had died long ago. I didn't expect this guy to still be alive. Judging from his aura, he was also a Grand Supreme Master. Could it be that this guy was involved in another timeline like Shen Yanxing and Hongqin Supreme? Seeing Zhou Xuanji's expression, Sunlight Emperor loudly laughed and said, "Do you not dare to believe it? To be honest, I'm even more shocked than you are. Originally, I thought that you were just one of my regrets in the past, but I didn't expect your growth to be so exaggerated. You actually became a great supreme of the second court in such a short time. In terms of talent, I really can't compare to you. In fact, I can even say that I'm far from you. It's like the difference between heaven and earth." Zhou Xuanji did not care about his flattery and asked, "Why are you here? What do you want?" Although Sunlight Emperor was not hostile, he had sneaked into the supreme plane without any warning. How could he not be vigilant? "I heard your call for help and came to help. We are old friends. Don't tell me you don't welcome me?" He flew up to Zhou Xuanji, looked at Little Sovereign and nodded slightly. Little Sovereign looked at him and didn't say anything. When he saw him approaching, he said, "You must have obtained the soul fusion inheritance of a sovereign." Soul fusion inheritance? What was that? Zhou Xuanji looked at Little Sovereign in confusion. "That's right, that person is my benefactor. I promised him that I would protect the Kunlun origin court. Now that Zhou Xuanji is the sovereign of the Kunlun origin court, I will naturally not oppose him." He could tell that Zhou Xuanji was still very resistant to him, so he did his best to prove his position. Little Supreme stared at Sunlight Emperor and said, "The soul fusion inheritance is to dedicate everything, including your soul, to the inheritor. Your own will be completely annihilated. This kind of inheritance can allow the inheritor's cultivation and realm to soar in an extremely short period of time. It's very stable." Zhou Xuanji raised his eyebrows. Yang Di's luck was that good? What kind of sacrifice did he have to make for the other party to be willing to help him? Yang Di sighed and said, "Zhou Xuanji, you said that the 9 absolutes of Qilin want to revive Cardinal Heaven. I'm willing to join you and fight against the 9 absolutes of Qilin. Cardinal Heaven is the ancestor of my benefactor, and it cannot be blasphemed." Zhou Xuanji nodded and asked, "What's your stage?" Sunlight Emperor replied, "The great supreme masters of the 3 courts have just broken through." He was 1 court higher than Zhou Xuanji, but he wasn't complacent. Based on his understanding of Zhou Xuanji, this gap wouldn't last long. "The soul fusion inheritance will make your cultivation improve steadily. Zhou Xuanji will have to spend a lot of effort to catch up with you," Little Sovereign said with a smile. Little Sovereign laughed with his hands on his hips. Sunlight Emperor also laughed. He could hear the hidden meaning in Little Supreme Expert's words. Spend a lot of effort. What a good choice of words. Sunlight Emperor didn't refute. He shrugged and said with a smile, "Since you have agreed, I will wait for you at the Thunder Alliance." After saying this, he turned into a ball of true sun fire, spinning and shrinking before quickly disappearing. Little Sovereign clicked his tongue in wonder and said, "It's really interesting. The Kunlun origin court has produced a lot of people with great luck in this period. It seems that it often encounters disasters, but in fact, it is showing signs of revival. Maybe it will restore the prosperity of the ancient times under your leadership. You need to encourage more geniuses to grow." Zhou Xuanji nodded. He began thinking about how to discover and stimulate geniuses. A grand event like the Superstar competition was not bad. However, it would be easier to find geniuses if it was developed and divided into different thresholds. He thought as he returned to the Supreme Hall. The people of the Kunlun Origin Court didn't know that the previous Supremes had just returned and helped them resolve a disaster. The Supreme Martial Artists didn't show themselves. They didn't even leave behind a word. Perhaps from their point of view, they didn't want their descendants to have any lingering thoughts. Only by relying on themselves could they truly pass on their legacy. The ancestors could not protect the descendants forever. In the spacetime vortex where thunder and lightning interweaved, the giant ship of the Qilin 9 Absolutes was still sailing. Qilin Ancient Desolation sat on the deck, quietly cultivating. He suddenly opened his eyes and exclaimed in shock, "Jiang Feili is dead? Impossible. Who could kill him? Could it be those old monsters?" He immediately began to deduce Jiang Feili. However, Jiang Feili had isolated his own fate when he was still alive, fearing that he would be able to divine it. The Qilin Ancient Desolate's deduction was fruitless. He frowned and fell into deep thought. Qilin Mei came from behind, bent down and asked, "Big brother, what are you thinking about?" She rarely saw the ancient desolate Qilin in such a state of unease. The other Qilin 7 Absolutes who were cultivating also opened their eyes and looked at Qilin Ancient Desolation in doubt. "Jiang Feili is dead," the Qilin Ancient Desolation calmly said. As soon as he said this, all the Qilin Absolute were shocked. Jiang Feili had always been a formidable enemy of the Qilin 9 Absolutes. After countless years of fighting, they were unable to kill the other party. Now that they heard about Jiang Feili's tragic death, they were shocked and even more terrified. Who exactly killed Jiang Feili? The Qilin 9 Absolutes might seem majestic, but the boundless universe was vast. They did not dare to claim to be invincible. "Are we still going to carry out the Myriad Domain Devil Lair plan?" a tall black figure asked solemnly. The Qilin Ancient Desolation glanced at him and said coldly, "Of course. The other party is Jiang Feili's enemy, not ours. Moreover, if we control that power, why would we be afraid?" Hearing this, everyone felt that it made sense. However, their hearts were shrouded in a shadow that could not dissipate for a long time. "At that time, I will ask an ancient great expert to take action to ensure that nothing goes wrong. He still owes me a favor." The Qilin Ancient Desolation continued to say, causing everyone to become excited. "Who?" a Qilin Absolute asked. The Qilin Ancient Desolation spat out a single word, "Hui." The others immediately opened their eyes wide and sucked in a breath of cold air. The Qilin Mei carefully asked, "Big brother, isn't this too risky?" Chapter 905. Isn't taking risks our norm? Why are you suddenly afraid now? If you are afraid, then disband the Qilin 9 Absolutes. Ancient Desolation frowned and shouted coldly. His face was filled with impatience. In the outside world, the Qilin 9 Absolutes were extremely awe-inspiring. Over time, Ancient Desolation had become extremely arrogant. Seeing his companions being afraid, he was very angry. The Qilin 9 Absolutes didn't dare to dissuade him anymore. Ancient Desolation let out a cold snort before turning around and walking toward the pavilion. The others looked at each other with different expressions. They were angry but didn't dare to speak. The atmosphere on the giant ship became extremely depressing. The Qilin 9 Absolutes each had their own agenda. They seemed to be united, but in fact, they had already fallen apart internally. Kunlun Origin Court, Supreme Palace. Zhou Xuanji was meditating and cultivating with the Emperor Sword hovering above his head. The Emperor Sword of Life and Death was transformed from the Soul Source Orb and the All Lives Brush. It was one with the Kunlun Origin Court. Zhou Xuanji was absorbing the power of the Kunlun Origin Court through the Emperor Sword of Life and Death. His absorption method wasn't a one-sided absorption but a win-win method. He fused his supreme divine power with the power of the Kunlun Origin Court, intertwining and tempering each other. He then guided the energy outside the Kunlun Origin Court to achieve a great cycle, consolidating the strength of himself in the Origin Court. Under such a cultivation method, Zhou Xuanji's cultivation had been steadily improving. However, he was still far from breaking through to the great sovereign of the three courts. He couldn't see the end. A soul flew out from the lesser supreme sword next to him. Little Sovereign stretched and yawned, asking, "Kid, why are you still cultivating? You really don't stop for a moment?" With the death of Jiang Feili, Zhou Xuanji's only enemy was the Qilin 9 Absolutes. However, the Qilin 9 Absolutes were being targeted by other sages. If he was Zhou Xuanji, he would definitely take a break. One couldn't just cultivate all the time in one's life. Not to mention that Zhou Xuanji was already very strong. He was a sovereign above the Kunlun Origin Court. "Is there any movement from Xinyanxing recently?" Zhou Xuanji asked without opening his eyes. Ever since Jiang Feili died, he had been asking Little Sovereign to pay attention to Shen Yanqing. Shen Yanqing was wandering around the Kunlun Origin Court as if she was looking for something. Little Sovereign shook his head and said, "I don't know. I always feel that a power is recovering in her body. Could this girl be someone else in disguise?" With this, Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and frowned instinctively. The term Little Supreme Being was too terrifying. If Shen Yanqing was not Shen Yanqing, wouldn't he be surrounded by danger during this period of time? "Do you have any proof?" Zhou Xuanji asked. Little Sovereign shook his head in response. He smiled and said, "I was just guessing." He then changed the topic and said, "Speaking of which, everything has a price. The speed of your cultivation breakthrough is already exaggerated enough. The same is true for Shen Yanqing, Shen Tang, and Yang Di. I guess they will have to pay a painful price. Shen Tang will forever be trapped in the sovereign realm of laws. It will be difficult for her to become a great supreme being. That Sunlight Emperor seems to be high-spirited and in an extraordinary state. However, the soul fusion inheritance is not so perfect. I can feel that his eyes are abnormal. There are two souls in them. As for the divine pinching star, I can't see it at the moment, which means there's a problem." Zhou Xuanji furrowed his brow. Listening to Little Sovereign's words, it seemed that Shen Yanqing and the other two were about to face misfortune. Puzzled, he asked, "Wait, why does Yang Di have two souls? Didn't you say that the soul fusion inheritance is the most perfect inheritance method?" Little Sovereign suddenly smiled. His smile was extremely sinister. He said in a meaningful tone, "I was just bluffing. When he first appeared, I noticed that there was another soul in his eyes. I know that guy. He used to be in existence like the evil Mother Spirit controller. I deliberately said that to make Yang Di let his guard down." "How despicable." Zhou Xuanji looked at Little Sovereign with a complicated look in his eyes. "This guy is too sinister. Will he plot against me in the future?" Little Sovereign faked a cough and said, "What do you mean? I've done my best for you. You actually doubt me. It hurts me so much." Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes at him. He didn't bother to answer. After a few breaths of silence, Zhou Xuanji couldn't help but ask, "What will happen to Yang Di? Will he be possessed?" Yang Di's return this time showed kindness to him, which changed his impression of Yang Di. The thought that the high-spirited Yang Di was about to be possessed made him feel a little uncomfortable in his heart. Who knows? Anyway, it won't end well. Don't even think about intervening. You have already been targeted by the ancient life lamp. Do you want to be targeted by another evil? Little Sovereign snorted. Zhou Xuanji didn't think much about it. Yang Di had his own life. He didn't care about it. He changed the topic to Supreme Crimson Dust. "Don't ask. When the time comes, you will understand everything. Instead of worrying about others, it's better to think about yourself," Little Sovereign said impatiently. Little Sovereign said impatiently, "How come this brat's heart warmed up after becoming a sovereign? This isn't a good thing." Perhaps because he absorbed the power of the Kunlun Origin Court, this kid has seen too many things in the world. He rolled his eyes and began to think about how to refine Zhou Xuanji's Dao heart. In a great world, Shen Yanqing strolled forward. Gloomy mist billowed. She was surrounded by mountains that looked like giant devils. She raised her right hand and said to her palm, "Is it here?" A pair of eyes emerged from her palm. This pair of eyes was cold and filled with evil qi. It turned forward. Shen Yanqing immediately understood and continued moving forward. Rumble. The earth suddenly shook violently. Coffins covered in soil rose from the ground, raising a cloud of dust. The giant mountain in front of her directly broke as if it had been split in half by a divine sword. Shen Yanqing's face was expressionless. She turned into a ray of light and flew between the two halves of the mountain, disappearing without a trace. After 10 breaths, Mortal Sovereign appeared. She frowned and looked over, murmuring, "Sure enough." Her eyes turned cold and her body dissipated into wisps of the red dust qi, sinking into the flying dust. Supreme Palace, Zhou Xuanji was still cultivating when Little Sovereign woke him up. "That girl has started to act. I'm very curious. Is there any secret hidden in the Kunlun Origin Court?" Little Sovereign said with narrowed eyes. Even a sovereign couldn't completely see through the Kunlun Origin Court. For example, Sovereign Kong Sheng had been hiding in the Origin Court to cultivate for countless years, unknown to anyone. Zhou Xuanji activated the exterminating divine eyes and locked onto Shen Yanqing's aura. But he couldn't see what Shen Yanqing was doing. There was a layer of mysterious power that isolated Zhou Xuanji's divine will, making it impossible for him to spy on Shen Yanqing. This kind of power wasn't strong. It was extremely weak, but it could completely block the divine will of a sovereign. Is what you said true? Zhou Xuanji murmured. A cold gleam flashed in his eyes. If this Shen Yinxing wasn't the real Shen Yinxing and she would harm the Kunlun Origin Court, then he wouldn't show any mercy. Keep watching and you will understand. I hope that what she is looking for is not what I fear the most, little sovereign said, shaking his head. His tone was full of deep meaning. Chapter 906. Oh, what do you fear the most in the Kunlun Origin Court? Zhou Xuanji asked. He could see every corner of the Kunlun Origin Court, but that was only on the surface. He couldn't see all the planes thoroughly. Little Supreme shrugged and said, it's an evil treasure more powerful than the Soul Source bead and the All Lives brush. You can't even say its name or you will suffer a backlash. Zhou Xuanji frowned. Why did the Kunlun Origin Court hide such a terrifying evil treasure? Wait a minute. Could it be related to the Holy Ghost? Ever since he had become a supreme being, Nanwu Qianni had sealed the Holy Ghost in an independent plane and made the Qianni divine range guard it. Although the Holy Ghost had stopped moving, the panic it had caused back then was still vivid in his mind. Zhou Xuanji had to be cautious. Why is the Holy Ghost born? Listening to Little Sovereign's previous words, he obviously knew the Holy Ghost's body. Could it be that it was because of this evil treasure that someone became a Holy Ghost? He looked up at Little Sovereign and asked with his eyes. Little Sovereign nodded slightly. Some things could not be said, but they could be communicated with eye contact. Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought. It seemed like he couldn't completely abandon the Kunlun Origin Court in the future. If something exploded in the Kunlun Origin Court, wouldn't it be a monstrous disaster? This had been the case when Wu Zhou had been in power. In the rolling black mist, Shen Yinxing floated in the air. She looked down. The mountain stream below was like an abyss, dark and gloomy, and the whistling wind was like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves. She raised her right hand with her palm facing downwards. Her eyes widened, and two streaks of bloody light shot out, breaking through the strands of black mist and penetrating downwards. Rumble, the earth shook and a terrifying aura erupted. The wind was blowing wildly, blowing Shen Yinxing's hair. She squinted her eyes, trying to see everything below. Shio. A scepter that looked like scorched wood suddenly rushed out. A fist-sized bead of blood was embedded in the top of the scepter. Fresh blood kept flowing out of it, making it look extremely terrifying. Shen Yinxing immediately stretched out her hand and grabbed the blood bead black staff. She frowned, her right hand trembling. Meanwhile, the entire Kunlun Origin Court was shrouded in a terrifying aura. All living beings felt an inexplicable sense of panic, as if a great disaster was about to befall them. What happened? Could it be that another supreme martial artist from outside the court has come to attack? That's impossible. How long has it been? The calamity of the Kunlun Origin Court is coming again. Everyone be careful. What a terrifying feeling. Even when I faced the Sword Emperor back then, I did not feel so terrified. Don't be afraid, we have a supreme being. He will protect us. All the creatures in the divine ranges were discussing this matter in fear, comforting each other. Zhou Xuanji appeared beside Shen Yinxing out of thin air and grabbed her wrist. In an instant, a sinister and powerful force entered his body through his palm, wreaking havoc in his muscles and bones. He frowned and immediately used his supreme god force to resist. The two powers clashed, and with an explosion, Zhou Xuanji's consciousness exploded. Following this, he saw scenes. The Grand Sovereigns held the blood bead black staff and laughed wildly. Their postures and smiles were the same, crazy and evil. What is this? Zhou Xuanji was shocked. Could these be scenes of the previous owners of the blood bead's black staff wielding it? Could these great supremes be the supremes of the Kunlun Origin Court? The scene kept changing, getting faster and faster. Zhou Xuanji wanted to break free from this illusion, but he felt an extremely powerful suppression on his soul, making it impossible for him to break free. Zhou Xuanji's eyes narrowed as he cast the sword fusion technique. At the same time, he created countless avatars that rushed in all directions. Boom, 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 the surrounding illusions shattered one after another. Gusts of wind swept over like the turbulence of time and space. He took the opportunity to cast the exterminating divine light to destroy everything as his consciousness returned to reality. The first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was Shen Yinxing's face. Her face turned hideous as blood streaks crawled up her cheeks. Her long hair turned white, fluttering in the wind. She grabbed the blood bead black staff with both hands, looking extremely crazy. She wouldn't let go no matter what. At this moment she seemed to have become another person. A person that Zhou Xuanji had never seen before. The lesser supreme sword appeared behind him as Little Sovereign's voice came, "Sure enough, it's this thing. Don't worry about her, run." His tone was incomparably anxious and terrified. Just as Zhou Xuanji was about to let go, Mortal Sovereign flew over from afar. Pinching star. Mortal Sovereign reached out and grabbed Shen Yanxing's shoulder. Zhou Xuanji's eyes widened as he shouted, "Get away!" As soon as he said this, Mortal Sovereign's hand fell on Shen Yanxing's shoulder. Zhou Xuanji could clearly feel the strange force fiercely attacking Mortal Sovereign's hand. He immediately used his supreme divine power to block it. But even so he couldn't completely block it. Mortal Sovereign gritted his teeth, lowered his head, and let out a painful groan. She looked at Shen Yanxing and said with difficulty, "Pinching star, what are you trying to do?" The devil-like Shen Yanxing glanced at her and said with a sinister smile, "Stupid, do you really think I'm your sister? Your sister is already dead. I'm already a different person." Hearing this, Mortal Sovereign's pupils suddenly shrank. She was dumbfounded. All along she had been looking for Shen Yanxing as her goal. After learning that Shen Yanxing had already died, she felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She seemed to have lost her soul, forgetting her own pain. "Then who the hell are you?" Zhou Xuanji asked, staring at Shen Yanxing. His intuition told him that the person in front of him was Shen Yanxing. Could it be that she has been possessed? Shen Yanxing looked at him and said with a contemptuous smile, "You don't deserve to know my name. I can only tell you that Shen Yanxing is indeed my previous identity. But she has already fallen in the passage between the two worlds. I'm just using her identity to gain a foothold. Let me go, and you and I can still maintain a friendly relationship. If you insist on stopping me, you will regret it." She pulled hard, trying to take away the blood bead black staff. But Zhou Xuanji's strength continued to increase. She couldn't take it away by force. Little Sovereign's voice rang in Zhou Xuanji's ears, "Let her go. This thing isn't a good treasure. She will reap what she sowed. The real treasure is down there. This kind of evil thing can be suppressed. Naturally, there is something that is not weaker than it." Zhou Xuanji furrowed his brow. He hesitated for a moment before letting go. Shen Yanxing's smile was extremely evil. With a shake of her shoulder, Mortal Sovereign was sent flying back while vomiting blood. The blood bead black staff in her hand quickly disappeared. "Zhou Xuanji, after getting along with you during this period of time, I still like you very much. We will meet again in the future. At that time you will see my true body. At that time I will let you understand how powerful I am." Shen Yanxing burst into laughter. Her voice echoed between the heavens and the earth for a long time. Zhou Xuanji took Mortal Sovereign into his arms and healed her. He scanned her with his divine will, but he could no longer find Shen Yanxing. "What the hell does she want?" Zhou Xuanji furrowed his brow. His heart was filled with anger. Little Sovereign's voice rang in his ear, "Quick! Go down. Don't let it run away. This is a great opportunity." Chapter 907. Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and put Mortal Sovereign down. Then he swooped down and disappeared into the dark mountain stream. After about 15 breaths of time, he suddenly rushed out, holding a red bead that was surrounded by flames. It was as big as a human head and looked very similar to the blood beads on the black staff. Compared to the blood pearl, this red pearl had more righteous qi. Holding it in his hand, Zhou Xuanji's eyes were filled with passion. What a powerful strength. Every time his spiritual force probed inside, his soul would tremble. He even felt that if he tried to force his way in, his soul would be severely injured. "What is the name of this treasure?" Zhou Xuanji asked in a low voice. He cast a glance at Sovereign Hong Qin, who was healing himself in the distance. Utter crimson dust flew over, an ugly look on her face. The injuries she had sustained had caused her to lose a great deal of blood, and even her soul had been damaged. But what hurt her the most was her heart. Knowing that Shen Yanxing had died a long time ago, Hong Qin's supremacy lost his soul and lost his purpose of living. She came before Zhou Xuanji but did not congratulate him. She was still in a daze. "I don't know the origins of this orb either. There are no records of its name in history either. I've only seen it once, and that was when my master took me on an adventure. I came back to search for it after I became a sovereign, but I was forced into retreat by the evil being from before. My cultivation as a great sovereign of the three courts directly dropped to reciprocity sovereign. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't have died so easily back then." Little Sovereign replied with a sigh in his tone. Zhou Xuanji was speechless. Was it really that terrifying? Fortunately, he didn't forcibly take away the blood bead black staff. Otherwise, he would have followed in the footsteps of Little Supreme Master. He immediately led Red Bead and Autarch Crimson Dust away. Inside the Supreme Hall, Zhou Xuanji sat on the golden throne. He looked down at Hongqin Sovereign and said with a frown, "Don't think too much. I think she is Xin Yanqing. It's just that her body might be occupied by another person. I can feel her soul. After all, I have the soul origin." Upon hearing this, Autarch Crimson Dust jerked his head up, a look of delight on his face. "Your task now is to work hard on your cultivation. Rather than being depressed, why not work hard? What do you think?" Zhou Xuanji said earnestly. Supreme Crimson Dust took a deep breath and tried to adjust his mood. She nodded at Zhou Xuanji and left. Looking at her back, Zhou Xuanji did not try to persuade her anymore. If it were him, he would also want to be alone. He sighed softly, then took out the red bead and observed it carefully. The Lesser Supreme Sword appeared next to him. Little Supreme Sword floated out and excitedly said, "Hurry up and give it a name." Although he didn't know the origin of this treasure, nor did he know how strong it was, he believed that the red pearl represented a great opportunity that even grand sovereigns would find difficult to obtain. Zhou Xuanji said, "Let's call it the Fated Fate Pearl." It meant that he had come across an opportunity. Little Sovereign rolled his eyes and said, "This name is too vulgar, quickly change it." Zhou Xuanji's eyes sparkled as he stared at the Fated Fate Pearl and said, "I believe this is its name now and in the future." He played with the Fated Fate bead repeatedly, trying to see through it. In his eyes, the Fated Fate Pearl was very mysterious, and this kind of mystery had an irresistible attraction to him. If you want to comprehend its true essence, I'm afraid you can't find the answer in the Kunlun Origin Court. You have to go to the Endless Universe. Little Sovereign continued. His tone was heavy as he warned, "Don't take out the Fated Fate Pearl outside to avoid unnecessary trouble." Zhou Xuanji nodded and began thinking about when to leave. He also wanted to go to the Thunder Alliance and the Yen Alliance. There was also the illusory god realm that Hongqin Saint Lord had mentioned. The Endless Universe was so big. There must be many mysteries that he couldn't imagine. "Maybe this pearl will change your fate," Little Sovereign said meaningfully. Little Sovereign said meaningfully as his eyes flickered. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "I have already become a grand sovereign. Is there still a fate to speak of?" In response, Little Sovereign just smiled and didn't say anything. In the dark void, Xin Yanqing was sitting on an old tree. Under the tree was a meteorite shining with a metallic luster. She was looking at the blood bead black staff with a frown. Why not? Could it be that the bead has weakened its power? As soon as she thought of the Fated Fate Pearl, her eyes turned cold. The Fated Fate Pearl had a great restraining effect on her. She didn't dare to touch it. She looked ahead and murmured, "It seems that I have to go to that place." She held the blood bead black staff tightly, absorbing its power. A light appeared in front of her. The old tree swayed as leaves drifted down. She immediately got up and said, "Who dares to play tricks in front of me?" Balls of raging flames swept out from the bright light, like a blooming flower of fire, bright and beautiful. "Humph, evildoer, I have been waiting for you for a long time." Liang You's cold snort resounded, causing Xin Yanqing to narrow her eyes. Sure enough, when they gathered outside the Kunlun Origin Court last time, this guy had seen through her identity. Xin Yanqing didn't panic. Instead, she grinned and said, "Kid, do you want to experience the pain of the past again?" Liang Yu stepped out of the fireworks. His face was filled with killing intent. He coldly smiled and said, "That was the past. I have been reborn and you are no longer as invincible as you were in the past." His eyes locked onto the blood bead black staff. A fiery light flashed in his eyes. Xin Yanqing raised the blood bead black staff and sneered, "What? You want it? Are you worthy?" After saying this, she waved the staff and struck forward. Liang Yu didn't retreat. Instead, he charged toward her. Hundreds of years later, Zhou Xuanji, Jiang Shui, Zhou Shaoxian, and Xian Xianghua gathered in front of the Supreme Palace. He looked at the three women and said with a smile, "It's okay, it's not life and death. No need to frown." Xian Xianghua curled her lips and said, "Since it's not dangerous, why didn't you take me with you?" Her cultivation had already reached Origin Fusion Divine Lord 8th level. She was still far from 9th level. Not making progress for a long time made her very annoyed. "Yes, the gap between us and you is getting bigger and bigger." Zhou Shaoxian nodded and said with a pitiful look on her face. She was hoping that Zhou Xuanji would agree. Jiang Shui, on the other hand, was very calm. She just looked at him quietly. Zhou Xuanji glared at them and said, "When I am strong enough, I will take you out sooner or later. Don't forget what I said to all living beings before. We will expand out sooner or later. When the time comes, you will be able to go out." Zhou Xiaoxian wanted to continue, but she was stopped by Jiang Shui. "Listen to your father, we have to believe in him," Jiang Shui said with a soft smile, looking at Zhou Xuanji with gentle eyes. Zhou Xuanji took her hand and said, "The superstar competition is about to begin. This is a brand new superstar competition. You must pay close attention and prepare well. I will leave an outer soul doppelganger to help you. You can contact me if you have any trouble." Jiang Shui nodded and said excitedly, "I will try my best." Zhou Xuanji looked at Xian Xianghua and said, "You have to help her too." Xian Xianghua rolled her eyes at him and snorted, "Nonsense, of course." Chapter 908. After chatting with his family for a while, Zhou Xuanji left on his sword. Jiang Shui raised her head and muttered, "I really hope I can see the scene of the Kunlun Origin Court attacking the Endless Universe." Xian Xianghua put an arm around her shoulders and smiled. "Don't worry. That day won't be long. The speed at which this brat grows is something we can never imagine." Zhou Xiaoxian rubbed her chin and pondered. She was thinking about the difference between her and Zhou Xuanji. She had now begun to be independent. Although she had gained a lot of training in the Kunlun Origin Court, she was increasingly aware of how insignificant she was. Only when she faced everything alone could she truly feel how powerful Zhou Xuanji was. "Wanshan Great Thousand has an opportunity that I left for you. Go." Zhou Xuanji's voice suddenly came into Zhou Xiaoxuan's ears, which stunned her. Her eyes reddened, but she didn't cry. Instead she laughed. Passing through the darkness, Zhou Xuanji flew on his sword. He played with the fated fate pearl in his hand, thinking about its profoundness. Little Sovereign, who was floating behind him, was also thinking. They were already obsessed with the fated pearl. Little Sovereign was even more frantic than Zhou Xuanji. At first he was patient. He wanted to wait until he went to the Endless Universe before comprehending this treasure. But when he saw Zhou Xuanji meditating, his heart itched. This is not. Because he couldn't suppress his curiosity, he also fell into the trap. He and Zhou Xuanji could look at the fated fate pearl for many years without moving. The two of them walked aimlessly, their gazes locked onto the fated pearl. In the blink of an eye, they flew past dozens of planes and territories. During this period of time they seemed to be frozen in time. Their eyeballs didn't even move. Boom. Suddenly, a rumbling sound came from ahead, startling the two of them as if they had just awoken from a dream. The Life and Death Emperor Sword and Soul Kunlun Sword instinctively appeared in front of Zhou Xuanji, guarding against any enemy attacks. Zhou Xuanji reacted quickly and stored the fated fate pearl into the supreme storage. Little Sovereign glanced at the red domain in front of him. There were countless stars scattered all over. Most of them were very small, like meteorites, but there were living beings living in them. These creatures had powerful qi and blood, but they didn't have intelligence. They were muddle-headed and couldn't escape the gravitational pull of the stars. "It's fine. It's just space-time collapsing." Little Sovereign shook his head. Just as he was about to continue speaking, his expression froze. Zhou Xuanji frowned as well. He asked, "Have we been targeted?" The space in front of him fluctuated, and a pair of scarlet eyes opened. Its pupils were larger than all the stars here. A terrifying killing intent swept over them like a tidal wave, drowning them. Zhou Xuanji's robe fluttered in the wind. He activated the sword fusion technique and raised his aura to the maximum. Without waiting for the other party to appear, he raised his sword and slashed out. Ultimate Chaos Dao. Boundless sword chi tore through the universe and shattered the pair of scarlet eyes. Roar! A roar exploded, reversing time and space. Zhou Xuanji's soul trembled, and violet light shot out of his eyes, freezing this shattered space-time. Not good. It was a jade-eyed Yamatou. He was Gu Tianlin's mount. It was an ancient demonic beast that once dominated an area of the boundless universe. Cried Little Sovereign. His fear made Zhou Xuanji feel a sense of danger. Zhou Xuanji charged straight into the space-time turbulence and into the absolute time realm to avoid the green-eyed Yamatoutai. No matter how strong the jade-eyed Yamatoutai was, it wasn't strong enough to kill its way into absolute time. Zhou Xuanji asked, "Was that demonic beast a coincidence?" How could he not think too much about encountering a rare ancient demonic beast? Little Sovereign hesitated and said, "I don't think so. After all, this beast has a master. Its first master is Gu Juejiu, who is also Gu Tianlin's father. You should know who Gu Juejiu is." He is a legend in the endless universe. He is close to the cardinal heaven realm. Ancient prodigies. Zhou Xuanji's pupils contracted abruptly, and his heart was in great shock. Gu Juejiu was an existence that shook the long river of history of the Kunlun origin court. If a cardinal heaven expert was praised as the strongest, there would definitely be people who would refute it. Moreover, only Gu Juejiu could stand side by side with a cardinal heaven expert. Zhou Xuanji frowned and said, "Could it be that the ancient genius is here too? He has his eyes on me?" When Jiang Feili attacked, many supreme sages gathered outside the Kunlun origin court, but most of the supreme sages didn't show up. Even little supreme sages couldn't recognize their voices. Little Sovereign was also worried about the problem that Zhou Xuanji mentioned. Gu Juejiu was an existence that Jiang Feili could not compare to. If even he wanted to target Zhou Xuanji, it wouldn't be good. They could feel the killing intent of the jade-eyed Yama Taotai. The two fell into silence. What should we do now? Is there another way to the Thunder Alliance? Zhou Xuanji asked. He didn't know how to go to the Thunder Alliance, but Little Sovereign knew. Little Sovereign furrowed his brow and said, "Let's avoid it for a while. That guy can't always wait for you outside." Zhou Xuanji agreed with him. He immediately took out the faded fate pearl and began to observe it. Little Sovereign's eyes were also fixed on it as he concentrated on it. Once again the two seemed to have lost their souls. They didn't say a word. After an unknown period of time, Zhou Xuanji came back to his senses and looked at Little Sovereign. He saw that this guy's eyes were wide open like a ghost. Zhou Xuanji angrily said, "Wake up, shouldn't we set off?" Zhou Xuanji's heart skipped a beat. He didn't notice it before. But when he saw Little Sovereign's expression, he inexplicably panicked. This is too terrifying. He suddenly felt that the faded fate pearl wasn't a supreme treasure but an evil object. Little Sovereign woke up from his trance and subconsciously replied, "Let's go." "Wait, don't worry." He furrowed his brow and began to think seriously. Zhou Xuanji's blood ran cold when he saw his reaction. The faded fate pearl could really make them lose their way. Even someone as strong as Little Sovereign would be the same. He immediately raised this question. The Thunder Alliance wasn't important right now. The key was how to deal with the faded fate pearl. Little Sovereign furrowed his brow after hearing this. His soul slightly trembled as he muttered, "Damn, it's okay if I didn't say it, but now." He also began to feel afraid. If the enemy attacked without anyone knowing and they were addicted to the faded fate pearl, wouldn't that be the end of them? The more he thought about it, the more afraid he became. He looked at the faded fate pearl with fear in his eyes. Sure enough, there's no such thing as a perfect treasure in this world. The better it is, the more dangerous it is, he muttered to himself. His expression was full of vigilance. Zhou Xuanji squeezed hard, trying to crush the faded fate pearl. However, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't crush the faded fate pearl. Little Sovereign took a deep breath and said, "It seems that we need to find Rainbow Qin Saint Lord. Only an existence like him can understand the mysteries of the faded fate pearl." Zhou Xuanji asked, "If Rainbow Qin Saint Lord is also deceived, wouldn't it be a disaster?" Little Sovereign glared at him and snorted, "You can't imagine how powerful a Saint Lord is. If this pearl was really that terrifying, the Kunlun origin court would have long perished." Zhou Xuanji felt that it made sense. He then put away the faded fate pearl and prepared to leave the absolute time realm. Chapter 909. After leaving the absolute time realm carefully, Zhou Xuanji was not attacked by the jade-eyed Yama Taotai again. He took Little Sovereign and moved forward at full speed. In the future he no longer took out the faded fortune pearl and regarded it as a taboo. Under the guidance of Little Sovereign, he passed through many planes and got closer and closer to the Thunder Alliance. Without the faded fate bead to attract their attention, Zhou Xuanji and Little Sovereign felt very uncomfortable at first. But after they got used to it they felt relaxed. "It's better now. I almost fell into their trap. Just thinking about it gives me some lingering fear." Little Sovereign sighed with emotion. It was he who instigated Zhou Xuanji to get the faded fortune pearl. Therefore he felt ashamed about it. He secretly warned himself to never relax his vigilance. No wonder the faded fate pearl could stay there for so many years without being taken away. Its terror was not inferior to that of the blood bead black staff. Zhou Xuanji asked, "How far is the Thunder Alliance?" As a great supreme of the second court, he was already far stronger than before. Even at full speed he still could not see the shadow of the Thunder Alliance. "Soon." Little Sovereign said perfunctorily. The endless universe was vast. In the past he had found the Thunder Alliance by accident. Zhou Xuanji frowned but did not ask further. 10 years later, Zhou Xuanji and Little Sovereign came to a strange universe full of spacetime vortexes. These spacetime vortexes varied in size. They were like eyes staring at them from all directions. This is close to the 10,000 domain demon lair. The 10,000 domain demon lair is huge, and there are many forces stationed around it. There are dozens of sacred grounds like the Thunder Alliance, but the Thunder Alliance is the most famous and has the longest history. Little Sovereign stared ahead and said leisurely. Without the jade-eyed Yama Taotai chasing after them, their journey was very easy. They didn't even encounter a Grand Supreme. Zhou Xuanji could already sense an aura that made him feel uneasy. It was similar to demonic might, but it was more profound and unfathomable than any demonic might he had ever seen. The Myriad Domain Demon Lair was a place where demons from billions of planes gathered. Countless demon bones were buried there. In the endless universe, the Myriad Domain Demon Lair was also known as the ancestral grave of the demon race. Little Sovereign began to tell him about the legend of the Myriad Domain Demon Lair. The birth of the Myriad Domain Demon Lair was extremely long ago. It could be traced back to the era of the primeval sovereigns. The primeval era was an incomparably resplendent era in the boundless universe. At that time, the primeval era dominated the boundless universe, and countless heroes emerged one after another, shocking the ancients and dazzling the contemporaries. It was said that the current Grand Supremes would be cannon fodder in the primeval era. The primeval era was a legend that was passed down by all living beings in the boundless universe. Countless cultivators took this as their goal and advanced wave after wave, hoping to create a new golden age just like the primeval era. It was rumored that the Myriad Domain Demon Lair was once a battlefield. The ancient demon race challenged the ancient venerables, but they were all annihilated. Their resentment did not dissipate, and now it had become a fiendish domain. Even Grand Supremes would encounter misfortune if they entered its range. Listening to Little Sovereign's narration, Zhou Xuanji also became very interested in the Prime Sovereign era. By the way, legend has it that Guzun also loved using swords. His sword was said to be the strongest in history. Little Sovereign suddenly thought of something and said meaningfully, Zhou Xuanji was determined to become the only sword emperor in history. If Guzun was still alive, he would definitely challenge him. Having heard this, Zhou Xuanji asked curiously, Ancient Sovereign, Sovereign Heaven, and Ancient Absolute Genius, who is the most powerful? Little Sovereign rolled his eyes at him and snappily said, Do you still need to ask? Can Cardinal Heaven and Ancient Peerless Geniuses create their own era? Zhou Xuanji immediately understood. It seemed that no one in the endless universe could compare to Guzun, at least on the surface. Could it be that Guzun had mastered a sovereign's opportunity? After all, legend had it that if one had a sovereign's opportunity, they could dominate the endless universe. All grand sovereigns would have to obey their orders. Another half a year passed. Zhou Xuanji finally came to the Thunder Alliance's territory. The Thunder Alliance was very big and was made up of dozens of universes. There were countless living beings here and there were countless floating islands. There were also massive cities that were as majestic as the sun. There were no guards in the Thunder Alliance. Any creature could enter and exit freely. Even so, Zhou Xuanji didn't see any fighting scenes when he scanned with his divine will. It seemed that there was some kind of extremely powerful force restricting the creatures here. Zhou Xuanji quickly flew toward a giant city ahead. Little Sovereign was still floating behind Zhou Xuanji. He wasn't afraid of being discovered. In the endless universe he wasn't a big shot. He wouldn't cause any disputes. I haven't been here for a long time. I really miss it. Many great sovereigns indulge in this place. You have to take it easy, Little Sovereign said with a faint smile. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow upon hearing Little Sovereign's words. Looking at his smile, he was probably talking about some brothels. Soon, Zhou Xuanji entered the city with Little Sovereign. After landing, he strolled forward while glancing at both sides of the street. Not all the creatures here were great sovereigns. But the weakest was at the Origin Fusion Divine Lord realm. There were all kinds of races. Even if they didn't speak the same language, their souls were powerful enough to understand each other. There were no stalls on both sides of the street. There were only overlapping pavilions selling all kinds of treasures. Zhou Xuanji felt the aura of hundreds of great sovereigns before he even took 10 steps. He sighed in his heart. Great sovereigns are really everywhere. A man in a blue robe quickly walked over from the front. He had 4 eyes but didn't look strange at all. On the contrary, he looked very handsome. He walked up to Zhou Xuanji and bowed. Senior, you must be the Sword Emperor, right? My Saint Lord sent me to meet you. Rainbow Qin Saint Lord. Zhou Xuanji was puzzled. Although Rainbow Chin Saint Lord had invited him before, he didn't expect Rainbow Chin Saint Lord to give him so much face. He even sent someone to pick him up immediately. Could it be that Rainbow Chin Saint Lord is plotting something? He couldn't help but be vigilant. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "Please lead the way." The man in the blue robe shook his head with a smile before flying into the depths of the universe with Zhou Xuanji. After flying over one giant city after another, about the time it takes for an incense stick to burn had passed. Zhou Xuanji saw a giant golden tower standing in the clouds. It was surrounded by giant cities in all directions. It looked incomparably magnificent. At the top of the giant golden tower was a fire phoenix with a wingspan of hundreds of millions of feet. It looked like a sun hanging high above, overlooking all living beings in the universe. The man in the blue robe led Zhou Xuanji to the gate below the giant tower. He respectfully said, "You can go in directly. Follow the sound of the guqin. The Saint Lord is waiting for you at the end of the sound." Zhou Xuanji nodded before pushing the door and entering. The inside was resplendent with gold and jade. An endless path appeared before his eyes. The walls on both sides were engraved with different portraits. They seemed to be recording some historical events. They were emanating a boundless aura. These murals have extremely powerful artistic conception. If you can keep comprehending them, it will be of great help to your cultivation, little sovereign exclaimed. He was even more in awe of Rainbow Chin Saint Lord. Zhou Xuanji heard the sound of the guqin coming from the front. It was very weak, but it had a penetrating power that made his heart ripple. He immediately walked forward. As he walked forward, the sound of the guqin grew louder and louder. The atmosphere also changed. Chapter 9-10. The sound of the zither was chilling. With every step Zhou Xuanji took, he felt an additional sound of the zither. After 100 steps, he felt hundreds of zither players playing at the same time. The sound of the zither was giving off a mighty pressure that was constantly increasing. Zhou Xuanji immediately understood. Hong Chin Saint Lord wanted to test him. Little Sovereign curled his lips. His awe of Hong Chin Saint Lord had diminished. In his opinion, Hong Chin Saint Lord didn't need to do this given his status. After all, Hong Chin Saint Lord invited Zhou Xuanji to be a guest. But he still wanted to test him. Wasn't this bullying the weak and losing the demeanor of his ancestor? Zhou Xuanji didn't notice Little Sovereign's emotions. He began sprinting forward. He quickly came to the end of the corridor. In front of him was a golden spiral staircase. He looked up but couldn't see the top. He leaped up and quickly rushed to the top of the tower. In less than 2 breaths, he rushed into a corridor at the top of the tower. He looked ahead and saw Hong Chin Saint Lord at a glance. Hong Chin Saint Lord was sitting on a piece of red cloth, playing the zither. In front of him was a pool. The surface of the pool reflected the scenes of the cities of the Thunder Alliance. Zhou Xuanji walked up to the pool and bowed, saying, "Greetings, Saint Lord. Thank you for your help that day." Hong Chin Saint Lord looked up at him and said with a smile, "No need to thank me. After all, I used to be the sovereign of the Kunlun Origin Court." Zhou Xuanji nodded. He then began thinking about how to tell him about the Fated Pearl. He wanted Hong Chin Saint Lord to see what secrets were hidden in the Fated Pearl. Apart from dealing with the 9 absolutes of Qilin, the more important task is to stop the resurrection of Cardinal Heaven. Cardinal Heaven deliberately left this legend of opportunity to make everyone crazy. In fact, he wants to resurrect himself. With his ability, the 9 absolutes of Qilin can't control him at all, Hong Chin Saint Lord continued. Hong Chin Saint Monarch continued. His eyes were so deep that no one could tell what he was thinking. Zhou Xuanji furrowed his brow. He asked in surprise, "Why do you want to stop the resurrection of Cardinal Heaven?" Cardinal Heaven was also the sovereign of the Kunlun Origin Court. He could be regarded as his ancestor. He was also a sovereign now. If there was no special reason, he wouldn't want to kill his ancestor for no reason. That's because Cardinal Heaven's ambition was too great. He wanted to surpass Guzun, but his methods were too iron-blooded and would bring disaster to all living beings. Back then when he fell, he provoked countless enemies. I was one of them. Although we were dissatisfied with his tyranny, he had indeed contributed greatly to the boundless universe. So, we wiped away all of his dark history and only left behind his invincible legend. Hong Chin Saint Lord looked at Zhou Xuanji and said seriously, "In the endless universe, there were many fanatical believers of the Cardinal Heavens." He wanted to see through Zhou Xuanji. Would this guy be fanatical about Cardinal Heaven? Fortunately, the expression in Zhou Xuanji's eyes did not change too much, just a little. Hong Chin Saint Lord could understand. After all, a Cardinal Heaven expert was Zhou Xuanji's senior. Moreover, he had no obligation to bear this responsibility. If you agree, I'll satisfy one of your requests. Anything is fine. Hong Qin Saint Monarch smiled. His expression was amiable, no longer giving off that oppressive feeling. Of course you can also refuse. I'm not forcing you. Zhou Xuanji's eyes sparkled when he heard this. He was weighing the pros and cons. Doing so might offend a Cardinal Heaven expert. If he succeeded in suppressing a Cardinal Heaven expert, it would be fine. But if a Cardinal Heaven expert was resurrected, he would definitely become the #1 target for revenge. If he was stopped by a nameless junior, he would definitely explode in anger. Hong Qin Saint Lord stopping a Cardinal Heaven expert was understandable. After all, Hong Qin Saint Lord's reputation was ridiculously high. Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and asked, "Why do you need me?" He needed an answer. Hong Qin Saint Monarch replied, "Because you're weak, you won't raise his guard. However, your strength surpasses your realm, and you'll be able to catch him off guard and deal him a fatal blow. I'll restrain him head-on with the other great experts." Zhou Xuanji raised his brow upon hearing this. Why is this opportunity so similar to Jiang Feili's plan? Is he that weak? Zhou Xuanji was a little speechless. He glanced at Little Sovereign. Little Sovereign's face turned solemn. He hesitated for a moment before nodding. Seeing this, Hong Qin Saint Lord smiled. He curiously asked, "I still remember you. Back then you were very similar to the Sword Emperor. But you were more high-spirited. If you really want to talk about who you are like, it's the Sovereign Heaven Path." Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes. The Sovereign Heaven Path? He glanced at Little Sovereign, only to see him smiling awkwardly. The Sovereign Heaven Path is overbearing. Could it be that Little Sovereign was also overbearing in the past? Didn't he love to cultivate geniuses without asking where they came from? Zhou Xuanji no longer thought about it. He looked at Hong Qin Saint Lord and said, "I can promise you, but I have a treasure. I want you to help me identify it and help me comprehend this treasure." Hong Qin Saint Lord nodded. He even felt a little surprised. Everything he had learned was a great treasure. Couldn't it be compared to an artifact? Zhou Xuanji took out the faded pearl. Hong Qin Saint Lord glanced at it but didn't pay much attention to it. The next second, his eyes suddenly fell on the faded pearl. Zhou Xuanji waited quietly. Little Sovereign didn't interrupt either. After a long while, Hong Qin Saint Lord asked with a complicated expression, "I didn't expect you to find this treasure." Obviously he knew about the faded pearl. "What is the origin of this pearl? How long has it existed?" asked Little Sovereign. Now, when he looked at the faded pearl again, his eyes were filled with fear. Hong Qin Saint Lord replied faintly, "The origin of this pearl is extraordinary. It has existed since the birth of the Kunlun Origin Court. Some sages speculated that it created the Kunlun Origin Court. No matter how high one's cultivation is, they will be attracted to it and unable to extricate themselves. No matter how evil the power is, it will suppress it." Strange, how did you get this treasure? It didn't resist you? Zhou Xuanji shook his head and replied, "It didn't resist when I grabbed it." Little Sovereign rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Hong Qin Saint Lord sighed and said, "It seems that it has chosen you. I can't help you with this because it is an existence that even I can't see through. Change your request." Zhou Xuanji furrowed his brow. What is this? If even Hong Qin Saint Lord can't see through the faded pearl, who should I look for? The time is not right. One day it will open up to you. All you need to do is wait. Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't play with it if you have nothing to do, Hong Qin Saint Lord said meaningfully. Zhou Xuanji had no choice but to take back the faded pearl. Little Sovereign gave him a look and said telepathically, "In that case, learn the Divine Rainbow Monarch Tao from him." Divine Rainbow Monarch Tao? What's that? Zhou Xuanji was confused, but he still made this request honestly. Hong Qin Saint Lord burst into laughter and said, "I have been waiting for you to say this. It seems that you are not knowledgeable enough. You need someone to guide you." Zhou Xuanji smiled awkwardly. He was even more interested in the Divine Rainbow Monarch Tao. "In that case, you will stay here and learn the Divine Rainbow Monarch Tao. When you reach the first level, I will let you out. If you can't do it, don't think about leaving." Hong Qin Saint Lord's expression turned serious. Zhou Xuanji looked confident and not worried at all. Chapter 9:11. Sit down. Zhou Xuanji nodded and sat down as well. Little Sovereign looked curious as he waited for Hong Qin Holy Monarch to preach. Hong Qin Saint Monarch glanced at him and smiled, "Don't look at indecent things." Little Supreme Being felt as if he had been hit in the head and instantly returned to the Lesser Supreme Sword. Seeing this, Zhou Xuanji could only put the lesser supreme sword into the supreme storage and wait for Hong Qin Saint Lord to preach. The Saint Rainbow Monarch Dao is a supreme sacred art that I created. It requires a firm heart. If one's will isn't firm, they won't be able to unleash the power of this Dao. He looked at Zhou Xuanji with an incredibly sharp gaze. He looked elegant and dignified, but he could always subconsciously give off a powerful aura that made Zhou Xuanji's scalp numb. Zhou Xuanji did not know if Hong Qin Saint Lord was doing this on purpose or if it was just an accident. Thereafter, Hong Qin Sage Monarch started to explain the sacred Rainbow Sage Monarch's way. Zhou Xuanji listened earnestly. Several years passed just like that. During this period of time, he and Hong Qin Saint Monarch did not move from their positions at all. They only moved their mouths and eyes. By the pool, Hong Qin Saint Lord looked at Zhou Xuanji and asked, "Do you understand?" Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and replied, "I roughly understand." He slowly stood up and prepared to find a quiet place to comprehend alone. "Just cultivate in front of me. There's no need to care about me." Hong Qin Saint Monarch called out to him with a thought-provoking expression. Zhou Xuanji did not retort and sat down again, closing his eyes and cultivating. The Saint Rainbow Monarch Dao was a type of will sacred art. It could continuously temper one's will, allowing one's cultivation to erupt in a short period of time. This kind of explosion would not harm the physical body or soul, and was extremely powerful. It could even influence the will of others. Currently, Zhou Xuanji had only learned the first level of cultivation, and he began to comprehend it seriously. In his opinion, the Saint Rainbow Monarch Dao was the pinnacle of a sword master's dominance. He was extremely interested in this divine ability. If he used the sword Dao to establish the divine Rainbow Monarch Dao, then wouldn't he be able to make all the swords in the boundless universe respect him? What a bold idea. Even if he managed to cultivate the first level of the Saint Rainbow Monarch Dao, he wouldn't be able to do it. But he dared to dream. As he began to cultivate, his swordsmanship appeared as if countless silver stars were circling around him. Rainbow Qin Saint Monarch smiled in satisfaction and thought to himself, "This kid's talent is indeed extraordinary." He actually directly understood the true essence of the Saint Rainbow Monarch Dao. He is truly an exceptional genius. At this moment, a ray of red light flew out from Zhou Xuanji's head. It was the fated pearl. The fated fate pearl covered Zhou Xuanji and red light shone on Hong Qin Saint Lord's face. His eyes widened in shock. "This pearl, how could it be?" Hong Qin Saint Monarch frowned and murmured. His gaze became complicated. He suddenly had expectations for Zhou Xuanji. How long would it take for this kid to master the Monarch Rainbow Dao? Inside a pavilion, Yang Di was drinking wine when a man in golden clothes appeared beside him. He knelt down on one knee and cupped his fists as he said, "Your Majesty, the Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji has come to the Thunder Alliance, but he was taken away by the Saint's people." "Sage?" Sunlight Emperor narrowed his eyes and murmured, "It seems that the sage has chosen him." He sighed with mixed feelings. He sighed to himself, "Zhou Xuanji, oh Zhou Xuanji. Why are you able to encounter great opportunities wherever you go? Your Majesty, do you still need me to wait for him to appear?" The golden-robed man asked. Sunlight Emperor nodded and waved his hand, "Go. Remember, do not offend the Sage Tower. Otherwise, I will not be able to protect you." The golden-robed man left immediately. Sunlight Emperor continued to think. He flipped his right hand and a golden dove appeared. It flapped its wings and flew out of the window. He then looked out of the window and said to himself, "Qilin 9 absolutes. Even the sage wants to deal with you. It'll be hard for you not to die." The Thunder Alliance was vast. There was a world here and there were undercurrents. The news about Hong Qin Saint Monarch taking in a disciple spread quickly. Hong Qin Saint Monarch was one of the most powerful cultivators in the Thunder Alliance. His Sage Tower attracted a lot of attention. That day many people saw Zhou Xuanji enter the Sage Tower and did not come out again. If this wasn't taking in a disciple, what was? If Hong Qin Saint Monarch wanted to harm Zhou Xuanji, he would not dare to lure Zhou Xuanji into the tower in front of everyone. Soon, all factions began to dig into Zhou Xuanji's background. A powerful cultivator divined that Zhou Xuanji came from the Kunlun Origin Court and was the current sovereign of the Origin Court. When this news came out, it completely shocked the Thunder Alliance. Hong Qin Saint Monarch was once the sovereign of the Kunlun Origin Court. This further proved that Zhou Xuanji was Hong Qin Saint Monarch's disciple. Hong Qin Saint Monarch never took in disciples. Zhou Xuanji would be the first. All the giant cities were talking about this. In one of the inns, people were drinking and talking about this. Tiske, I didn't expect the Saint Monarch to take in a disciple. So, the legendary decisive battle is coming? That's right. Gu Tianlin's name has already shaken tens of thousands of domains. How can Zhou Xuanji fight him? Believe in the Saint Monarch. His eyes are definitely ruthless. But how long will this unprecedented decisive battle take place? Back then, when Gu Tianlin was rejected by the Saint Monarch, he swore that he would kill every disciple the Saint Monarch took in. Gu Tianlin seems to be coming to the Thunder Alliance soon. In a corner of the inn, a woman was shaking a jade cup alone. It was Xin Yanxing. Hearing the discussions around her, she said in amazement, "That guy really causes a commotion wherever he goes. I like it." She smiled and got up to leave. While the outside world was in chaos, Zhou Xuanji was still cultivating. He didn't know that he had become the focus of the Thunder Alliance. He didn't open his eyes. He was in a wonderful state. The sword's way was transforming. The sword's way, the sword that ruled everything. Not only the sword, but he wanted to rule everything. His will began to transform toward the divine rainbow monarch Tao. So fast? Hong Qin Saint Lord said in amazement. His gaze fell on the faded pearl above Zhou Xuanji's head. The faded pearl gave off strands of red light that surrounded Zhou Xuanji like a river. It made him look so sacred and majestic. Hong Qin Saint Lord fell into a daze as he looked at Zhou Xuanji. Another long period of time passed. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes. The faded pearl quickly disappeared into his body, and the surrounding red light dissipated as well. He looked at Hong Qin Saint Lord and asked, "Saint Lord, did I succeed?" Hong Qin Saint Lord nodded and said calmly, "You have great serendipity. You succeeded." Having heard this, Zhou Xuanji was not surprised. He only smiled calmly. "What about the cultivation method after that?" he asked. He couldn't wait to continue cultivating the second and third levels. He was fascinated by the power of the divine rainbow monarch Tao. That's all. The divine rainbow monarch Tao has countless levels, but only one can be cultivated, Hong Qin Saint Lord replied with a meaningful smile. Zhou Xuanji understood immediately. Hong Qin Saint Lord was telling him that he should create his own divine rainbow monarch Tao. After you leave, you must be careful. There is a cause and effect. You have cultivated my divine rainbow monarch Tao, which is equivalent to half a disciple of mine. You must bear this karma, Hong Qin Saint Lord said with narrowed eyes. Chapter 9:12. Bear the karma? Zhou Xuanji frowned and said with some dissatisfaction, "Saint, I didn't learn your Saint Rainbow Monarch way for nothing. I'm going to help you deal with Cardinal Heaven Saints, and yet you're saying this now. Aren't you digging a trap for me?" Hong Qin Saint Monarch shook his head and said with a smile, "How can you say that? This is also your fortuitous encounter. After you leave, you can choose whether or not you want to accept this karma. If you refuse, the fortuitous encounter will leave. It's all up to you." Zhou Xuanji did not believe him. Just as he was about to continue speaking, Rainbow Qin Saint Lord waved his right hand and sent him out. Zhou Xuanji landed in front of the Saint Tower's gate with a deep frown. At this moment he suddenly felt countless divine wills sweeping past him from all directions. He turned around and saw that this part of the universe was vast and boundless. In the distance, giant cities stood in great numbers and countless living beings came and went. Everything looked so prosperous and harmonious, exactly the same as what he had seen before. However, at that time he had not been the focus of so many divine wills. What happened? Zhou Xuanji raised his brow in confusion. Could this be the cause and effect that Hong Qin Saint Monarch mentioned? He scanned his surroundings and flew toward a nearby city. As soon as he entered the city, he quickly found an inn to stay in. During this time, there were still many divine senses locked onto him. In the Thunder Alliance, there were many people whose cultivation surpassed his. He took out the Lesser Supreme Sword and asked Little Supreme Sword why it was like this. "Wait, I suddenly remember." Little Sovereign's eyes widened as he exclaimed. Cold sweat began to overflow from his forehead. Seeing how nervous he was, Zhou Xuanji felt even more confused. It still related to that Gu Tianlin. When Gu Tianlin was young, he was peerlessly talented and considered himself to be extraordinary. He once wanted to become the disciple of the Holy Sage, but was rejected by the Holy Sage. Deeply humiliated, he swore an oath that if the Holy Sage dared to accept a disciple, he would kill the disciple. "Before I died, one of the Holy Sage's disciples was brutally killed by Gu Tianlin. Moreover, it wasn't a sneak attack but a challenge. He killed him in front of everyone." He believed in Zhou Xuanji's talent, but what kind of person was Gu Tianlin? Gu Tianlin had been cultivating longer than him. How could Zhou Xuanji fight against him? Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, "The saint doesn't hate you? Or is it that Gu Tianlin is so powerful that even the great sage is afraid of him? Or could it be that Gu Tianlin's father, the peerless genius of the ancient times, was still alive?" Little Sovereign glared at him and disdainfully said, "This is an open and above-board battle. Life and death are up to fate. How can a highly respected expert like the sage take action?" Zhou Xuanji could not help but shake his head and said in a low voice, "You want to save face and suffer." Gu Tianlin was obviously targeting Hongqin Great Sage. What was the point of talking about morality at this time? "Don't worry about it too much. I reckon that the outside world has already regarded you as the holy sage's disciple. Gu Tianlin has his eyes on you and will definitely not let you off," Little Sovereign said with a dignified expression. Just the jade-eyed Yama Taotai alone was enough to make them tremble in fear, let alone Gu Tianlin. Zhou Xuanji sat in front of the table and poured wine for himself. "Since it's like this, let's wait for him to come," he said calmly. He already understood sacred monarch Hongqin's intentions. To him, Gu Tianlin was both a crisis and an opportunity. He had just arrived, and if he could defeat Gu Tianlin, he would truly be the disciple of the Hongqin sage. At the same time, his reputation would skyrocket. In the future, when he led the Kunlun origin court to the boundless universe, everyone would definitely give him face. At that time, the Kunlun origin court would completely soar. Thinking of this, Zhou Xuanji's eyes turned sharp. Little Sovereign understood what he was thinking and frantically said, "Brother, don't think too highly of yourself. You are not Gu Tianlin's opponent at all. Even Jiang Feili couldn't compare to Gu Tianlin's strength." "I know, but doesn't Gu Tianlin like to fight? In other words, the battle won't come too soon. I can stall for time," Zhou Xuanji said, shaking his head with a smile. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and smiled. After learning the Holy Rainbow Monarch way, he really wanted to see how powerful he was. However, Gu Tianlin wasn't a good opponent for the time being. Right now, he just wanted to fight the Qilin 9 Absolutes as soon as possible. At the same time, he also wanted to know who made the Qilin 9 Absolutes issue the universe kill order. That guy shouldn't even think about living. Little Sovereign began to ponder. After a while, the door was knocked. Zhou Xuanji said without looking back, "Come in." The door was pushed open and Yang Di stepped in. He said with a smile, "Sword Emperor, you are really amazing. You have just arrived and you have already stirred up a storm in the Thunder Alliance. Now, everyone in the outside world is talking about you." He sat on the stool next to Zhou Xuanji and picked up the wine pot. He didn't treat Zhou Xuanji as an outsider at all. "Since you already know, you still dare to come to me. Aren't you afraid of offending Gu Tianlin?" Zhou Xuanji asked with a faint smile. He looked at Yang Di curiously. "Is the soul really in Yang Di's body?" Yang Di smiled confidently and said, "Gu Tianlin is looking for you, not me. He is proud and aloof. He cares about his face the most. How can he kill the innocent? Besides, Gu Tianlin also wants to deal with the Qilin 9 Absolutes. Before that, he will not cause trouble for you." Zhou Xuanji was surprised. Gu Tianlin also wants to deal with the Qilin 9 Absolutes? Previously, he guessed that Gu Tianlin had something to do with the Qilin 9 Absolutes. That was why he sent the jade-eyed Yama Taotai to deal with him. This is what happened. Since the establishment of the Qilin 9 Absolutes, they have issued the universe kill order and accepted hunting missions everywhere. They have provoked countless enemies. One of Gu Tianlin's illegitimate descendants was also attacked by the Qilin 9 Absolutes. This has become Gu Tianlin's biggest joke. As long as the Qilin 9 Absolutes are not destroyed, it will be difficult for him to quell his anger. Zhou Xuanji shook his head after listening to Yang Di's explanation. Why are there still so many powerful cultivators who care about their face in the endless universe? The Qilin 9 Absolutes didn't care about their reputation. That's why they have such momentum today. "Why did you come to me?" Zhou Xuanji asked, changing the topic. He couldn't wait to deal with the Qilin 9 Absolutes. The corner of Yang Di's mouth rose as he said, "Get ready. The Qilin 9 Absolutes have already rushed to the Myriad Domain Devil Lair. They are gathering their minions. They have already caused a lot of turmoil. Everyone thinks that they just want to kill their way in to find the Sovereign's opportunity. Little do they know that their real goal is the Sovereign Heaven. Therefore they didn't hide their actions. It is said that the martial dragon ape Sovereign has been captured by them." His eyes were filled with fighting spirit as he gripped his wine glass tightly. "Martial dragon ape Sovereign? TSK, the Qilin 9 Absolutes are already this strong?" Little Sovereign sighed. He had obviously heard of the martial dragon ape sovereign. Zhou Xuanji wasn't interested in the martial dragon ape sovereign. He asked, "When can we leave?" Yang Di replied, "We have to leave in half a year at the latest. This is also the reason why the saint released you." Half a year. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. He didn't expect the Qilin 9 absolutes to move so quickly. He originally thought that the Qilin 9 absolutes would take some time to prepare. "Okay, you get ready first. I also need to find other helpers." Yang Di got up and left after saying this. Chapter 9:13. Half a year was very short in the endless universe. Zhou Xuanji did not cultivate but wandered around the Thunder Alliance. Occasionally he would buy things that he was interested in. The common currency in the endless universe was the Supreme Crystal. Supreme Crystals were produced by Supreme Divine Power, and required special methods to refine them into pure energy crystals that could be used by other creatures to cultivate. In the Thunder Alliance, every single Supreme Crystal had to be inspected before it could be used to trade for treasures. Apart from that, one could also use treasures and divine abilities to exchange for Supreme Crystals. Zhou Xuanji's Supreme Storage had plenty of artifacts, natural treasures and cultivation techniques. He did not need to consume his own sovereign divine power at all. On this day, Sunlight Emperor found Zhou Xuanji and prepared to bring him to the Myriad Domain Devil Lair. Zhou Xuanji hesitated and asked in his heart, "Should I contact the saint?" Little Sovereign replied, "Don't worry." How could he not know? That's right. Zhou Xuanji immediately felt relieved. Holding the Lesser Supreme Sword in his hand, he flew out of the Thunder Alliance's domain with Yang Di. Hundreds of figures were floating in the dark void in front of them. All of them were great sovereigns and half of them were great sovereigns that he couldn't see through. "Sunlight Emperor, you are finally here," a Grand Supreme said with a smile. The other Grand Supreme also looked at Sunlight Emperor. Their gazes fell on Zhou Xuanji. In an instant, nearly half of the Grand Sovereign's faces changed. Sword Emperor. The disciple of Hongqin Sage Monarch. Zhou Xuanji understood their expressions and felt a little helpless in his heart. Even though Hongqin Saint Lord was highly respected and had unfathomable cultivation, Zhou Xuanji no longer wanted to take him as his teacher. He did not need a master. Even without the divine Rainbow Monarch Dao, he could still become stronger. After exchanging some pleasantries, the group continued moving forward. Zhou Xuanji received a lot of eager attention. He didn't put on airs in front of these great sovereigns and chatted happily with them. The Thunder Alliance was at the edge of the 10,000 Domain Demon Lair. After flying for a short while, they could see the majestic scene of the 10,000 Domain Demon Lair from afar. It was as if a huge black mouth was hanging in front of him, and its edges were suffused with red clouds. It was extremely bewitching. Myriad Domain Devil Nest, Supreme Being Graveyard. Since ancient times, how many heroes have died here? Sunlight Emperor sighed with a complicated look. But Zhou Xuanji saw a face flash across his eyes. It was extremely horrifying, but it disappeared in an instant. What should we do? Should we force our way through or hide? A girl asked. All the supreme beings gathered here had a blood feud with the Qilin 9 absolutes. Her Tao companion had been killed by the 9 absolutes of the Qilin, and her soul had even been refined into an elixir. At the mention of the 9 absolutes of the Qilin, her gaze was incomparably vicious. Sunlight Emperor pondered and said, "Let's hide first. The 9 killers of Qilin have been loitering at the edge of the Myriad Domain Devil Lair. I'm afraid their target is not the supreme opportunity. Let's see the situation clearly before we make a move. This time it's not just us who are dealing with the 9 killers of Qilin." He did not reveal the true purpose of the 9 absolutes of the Qilin. If other people knew that a Cardinal Heaven expert could control it, there would be a huge uproar. After that, Sunlight Emperor took out a stone and put everyone in it. Then he held the stone and flew forward. Zhou Xuanji came to a dark space. He and the other great sovereigns landed on a floating island and waited quietly. Before the battle, everyone stopped chatting and adjusted their state, ready to fight at any time. Zhou Xuanji walked to an empty corner with the Lesser Supreme Sword in his hand. He leaned against a rock and asked in his heart, "Did you notice it just now? Well, that guy's soul is indeed still there. The soul fusion inheritance is just a cover. Looking at his face, I estimate that it won't be long before Sunlight Emperor's body will be seized. This process is irreversible unless Sunlight Emperor is killed." Little Supreme replied with a solemn tone. He was afraid of the soul in Sunlight Emperor's body. He can perfectly use the soul fusion inheritance and hide his soul. I'm afraid his origin is more terrifying than I thought. After dealing with the 9 absolutes of the Qilin, you must stay away from Sunlight Emperor as soon as possible to avoid unnecessary trouble, Little Sovereign reminded. Little Sovereign, fearing that Zhou Xuanji would stir up trouble again. Zhou Xuanji snorted in his heart, I'm not that bored. After dealing with the 9 absolutes of the Qilin, I still have to face Gu Tianlin. Although he and Sunlight Emperor were old friends, they weren't so close that they would risk their lives for each other. This cooperation was only because the two had a common goal. But then again, what was the hatred between Sunlight Emperor and the 9 absolutes of the Qilin? Did he really just want revenge? Zhou Xuanji was very doubtful about this. Every time Sunlight Emperor mentioned the 9 absolutes of the Qilin, it was more playful than murderous. On the other side, Sunlight Emperor flew straight toward the 10,000 territories devil lair. His body radiated a dazzling golden light, like a sun traversing the void. After flying for a long time, he finally saw the giant ship of the 9 absolutes of the Qilin. From a distance, it looked like a giant beast crawling in the void. Ancient desolation of the Qilin, long time no see. Sunlight Emperor flew toward him and shouted in a loud voice. As soon as he finished speaking, streams of black saber chi swept over with great momentum, intending to cut him into ashes. The golden light on his body suddenly surged, counteracting all the black saber chi. He smiled contemptuously and said, What? You 9 absolutes of the Qilin are so afraid of me? If you don't let me finish, you will attack. Facing the 9 absolutes of the Qilin, his eyes were sharp. His hands and his sleeves were clenched into fists. He was obviously very vigilant. Who are you? We have met before, but I can't remember your name, Ancient Desolation's voice floated over. The Qilin Ancient Desolation's voice floated over, its tone hesitant. Sunlight Emperor wasn't worthy of his attention. In this regard, Sunlight Emperor wasn't angry. He smiled and said, I know your plan. I can help you awaken the cardinal heaven. As soon as he said this, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Sunlight Emperor. It was the Ancient Desolation of the Qilin. He stretched out his hand trying to grab Sunlight Emperor's neck. Sunlight Emperor's body flashed and turned into countless shadows, dodging his hand. The Ancient Desolation of the Qilin cried out in surprise. He couldn't believe his eyes. How could this guy dodge him? That is, the Ancient Desolation of the Qilin squinted his eyes. Seeing the face in Sunlight Emperor's eyes, he immediately thought of something and smiled weirdly. Looking down at the Ancient Desolation of the Qilin, Sunlight Emperor said, I am from the Kunlun Origin Court. If you attack again, I will not help you. I will help others to awaken the cardinal heaven. His face was cold. He was trying his best to restrain the murderous intent in his heart. This guy is too presumptuous. He didn't take me seriously at all. The Ancient Desolation of the Qilin asked with a faint smile, How can you help me? Sunlight Emperor snorted coldly, Jiang Feili has already told Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji about your plan. And in order to deal with Jiang Feili, Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji told all the sovereigns of the Kunlun Origin Court. Do you understand your situation now? Having heard this, the Ancient Desolation of the Qilin's expression changed drastically. Although he was confident, he wasn't so confident that he was invincible. The thought of some powerful cultivators from the Kunlun Origin Court made him shudder. No wonder he had been feeling uneasy recently. Then how do you want to help me? The Ancient Desolation of the Qilin asked coldly, staring into Sunlight Emperor's eyes. Chapter 9:14. Sunlight Emperor transmitted his voice to Ancient Desolation. He was confident that Ancient Desolation would agree. Just as expected, Ancient Desolation's eyes flickered when he heard this. The atmosphere was silent. The surrounding void was frozen. In the distance, the 8 ultimate Qilin stood on the deck and looked at Sunlight Emperor with different expressions. After a while, Ancient Desolation looked up at Sunlight Emperor and said, Okay, follow me. He turned around and flew toward the giant ship. Sunlight Emperor followed closely behind. And just like that, Sunlight Emperor entered the giant ship. He projected his vision into the world inside the stone so that everyone could see it. TSK, what did Sunlight Emperor say to Ancient Desolation? He dared to let us see it. It must be something important. Didn't he say to hide? Why did he go up himself? What did he say to make Ancient Desolation trust him? Ancient Desolation is famous for being suspicious. I think we still have to be careful of him. The great sovereigns discussed and became vigilant against Sunlight Emperor. Zhou Xuanji was also confused. What did Sunlight Emperor say to Ancient Desolation? Under the lead of Ancient Desolation, Sunlight Emperor boarded the ship. The two walked into a pavilion and began talking about the past in the myriad domain devil lair. They did not mention Sovereign Heaven and Sovereign Serendipity. It seemed that Ancient Desolation did not completely trust his subordinates. The two chatted for a while before Ancient Desolation left, leaving Sunlight Emperor to rest alone. Sunlight Emperor did not enter the stone space where Zhou Xuanji and the others were, nor did he take them out. Instead, he cultivated quietly. Time passed just like that. About 4 years had passed. Qilin 9 Absolutes began to move. The giant ship flew toward the darkness of the myriad domain devil lair and was soon swallowed by the darkness. Numerous black shadows appeared on the giant ship like ghosts. Qilin 9 Absolutes stood on the deck, side by side looking ahead. "Big brother, do you feel it? Killing intent." The other Qilin 9 Absolutes looked solemn too. They had sensed the dangerous aura a few years ago. But they could not defeat Ancient Desolation. Moreover, it would be more dangerous if they left alone. The Qilin 9 Absolute strength was uneven. Ancient Desolation was far more powerful than them. This was also the biggest reason why they relied on Ancient Desolation. For countless years they had killed too many creatures and made countless enemies. Once they left Ancient Desolation they would surely be killed. "It's fine. Let's move forward," Qilin Gu Huang said with a calm expression. He did not panic in the slightest. His eyes were filled with passion. He couldn't wait to carry out his plan to revive a Cardinal Heaven expert. A majestic fog appeared in the darkness ahead. It was getting closer and closer like a sea of clouds. "Take out the Opportunity Stone," the Qilin Ancient Desolation suddenly ordered. As his voice fell, countless Opportunity Stones flew out from the black shadows and floated above the giant ship. They were like billions of stars, emitting various colors of light, extremely resplendent. At the same time the Grand Supremes in the stone space all stood up. Zhou Xuanji continued to meditate and looked up at Yang Di's vision. He asked in his heart, "Can you tell?" The Lesser Supreme Sword next to him trembled slightly, and Little Supreme Sword's voice entered his ears. "I can't see through him. His cultivation is still improving." 3 years ago, Zhou Xuanji and Little Sovereign noticed that Yang Di's cultivation was quietly improving. If not for the fact that Zhou Xuanji had learned the Saint Rainbow Lord Dao, he would not have noticed this. At the very least, the other Grand Sovereigns didn't notice it. This guy might have already used the power of the soul in his body. "I just don't know if he is aware of the existence of the soul's consciousness," Little Sovereign sighed. Not only could he not see through Yang Di's cultivation, but he also couldn't see through this guy's intentions. The younger generation nowadays is really getting more and more extraordinary. Zhou Xuanji noticed that Yang Di had already gotten up and walked out of the pavilion. He then saw the vast sea of Opportunity Stones. He continued to ask in his heart, "Do you think he might have some other conspiracy?" Little Sovereign replied, "There must be. Be careful." The other Grand Sovereigns were also exhorting each other and exhorting each other. "Not only do I have to be careful of the Qilin 9 Absolutes, but I also have to be careful of Yang Di." Zhou Xuanji was inwardly surprised. Aren't they afraid that Yang Di will hear them? Yang Di has never explained anything. Could it be that he tacitly agrees? Let him out. The Qilin Ancient Desolation's voice interrupted Zhou Xuanji's thoughts. A black hole appeared above the giant ship, and a ferocious dragon head poked out. He had the body of an ape with exaggerated muscles. The black hair on his body swayed like flames. Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign. He was even bigger than the black ship. He spread his arms, shaking the surrounding clouds. "Break through," Qilin Ancient Desolation ordered. As his voice fell, Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign opened his bloody mouth. There was a loud bang. A blood-colored beam of light shot out from his mouth, directly shattering the dark space in front of him. The nearby spiritual chi poured into the hole in front of him as illusions emerged one after another. These illusions were all scenes of some powerful cultivators roaming the myriad domain devil lair. When they gathered together, it was like a blooming epiphyllum. It was extremely spectacular. "Go in." Qilin Ancient Desolation waved his right hand. Countless Opportunity Stones turned into a river and poured into the hole in the space. In an instant, the Opportunity Stones exploded one after another, turning into endless powder. The Qilin 9 Absolutes raised their hands in unison as a black flag appeared in their hands out of thin air. A blood-colored face was engraved on the flag. Only the outline could be seen, but the face couldn't be seen. "Universe Overlord, show yourself." Qilin Ancient Desolation furiously roared. His robe fluttered in the wind, looking extremely domineering. Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign flew out of the black hole and slammed into the hole in the space, stepping into the Opportunity Stone powder. All the Opportunity Stone powder attached to his body, turning him into a body of light. The 9 black flags burst out with a blood-colored radiance, intertwining with each other before condensing into a blood-colored net of light that spread toward Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign. Those flashing illusions also drilled into Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign's body. So that's how it is. Those are the memories of a cardinal heaven. Little Sovereign sighed. Little Sovereign sighed. He admired the ancient desolate Qilin's means. Zhou Xuanji was also seriously observing. He wanted to explore the mystery behind it. Qilin Ancient Desolation is really amazing. No matter how amazing he is, he still has to die. Who is the universe overlord? In all fairness, Qilin Ancient Desolation is indeed a peerless genius. No wonder he can develop the Qilin 9 absolutes to this point. What is he doing? Why does it feel like he is going to resurrect someone? The great sovereigns were in an uproar. Only now did they realize that something was wrong. Qilin 9 absolutes wasn't looking for a sovereign's opportunity but to resurrect an ancient powerful cultivator. Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign's figure began to change. His roar shook the myriad domain devil lair. He was in extreme pain. Just at this moment, a faint sound of a zither resounded. It sounded like an illusion under the roar of Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign. Qilin Ancient Desolation's expression changed drastically. He murmured, "You really came." He immediately signaled the Qilin 8 absolutes to prepare for battle. Chapter 9:15. Hongqin Sage. Not only ancient Qilin, but the other 8 absolutes also guessed the other party's identity. Their faces instantly turned ugly. They had guessed that enemies would come to disturb them, but they didn't expect the first to be Hongqin Sage. Given Hongqin Sage's identity and status, if he made a move, it would definitely attract more enemies, and the danger would be unthinkable. Damn it! What feud do we have with him? Sage has made a move. Looks like someone is targeting us. Be careful, there are other murderous intents. Once our plan succeeds, we won't have to be afraid of sages. With Big Brother here, sages are nothing. Ancient Qilin regained his calm after listening to his subordinates' discussion. He was the leader of the 9 absolutes, so how could he panic? He glanced at Martial Dragon Ape. Martial Dragon Ape's form had changed completely. He looked like an ancient demon god. Within the light, he had 6 arms looking extremely ferocious. Especially his eyes, which shone with a green light that even the Opportunity Stone could not cover. Cardinal Heaven. The overlord of the universe was reviving. His aura rose steadily and was terrifyingly strong. At this moment, waves of peerlessly powerful auras erupted from all directions, surrounding the giant ship. Prepare to fight. A burly Qilin absolute roared. The black figures on the ship took out their magic treasures and prepared to fight. The experts who had been hiding for a long time appeared one after another. There were hundreds of them, all emitting tyrannical auras, causing the dark space of the myriad domain devil lair to ripple. Hongqin Sage's music stopped abruptly. Ancient Qilin. It's time for our battle to continue. Li Yingyo's domineering laughter resounded throughout the myriad domain devil lair. He who was burning with flames, walked towards Ancient Qilin step by step. Ancient Qilin flipped his right hand, and a blood blade appeared in his hand. The back of the blade was dyed with black patterns, and the front of the handle was like a ferocious tiger's head. The tiger's eyes were inlaid with 2 purple crystals, emitting an ominous glint. A bunch of rascals dare to stop me. Today I will kill you one by one like the overlord of the universe and bury you in the myriad domain devil lair forever. Ancient Qilin laughed. As his voice fell, his aura suddenly exploded. All the supreme experts' expressions changed. What a blood-red light shone in the myriad domain demon lair, and a violent saber chi raged in the dark void. The Grand Supremes used their divine abilities to defend themselves. The other Qilin 8 absolutes also made their moves and a great battle broke out. Inside the spatial hole, Martial Dragon Ape Venerable was still roaring, but his voice was changing. His aura began to strengthen at an extremely fast speed, startling some great supreme beings into turning around to attack him. However, they were stopped by the Qilin 8 absolutes. The black silhouettes on the giant ship also attacked. Their cultivations weren't weak either. They flew quickly, and their speed was so fast that the eyes of the Grand Supremes couldn't keep up. The battlefield became chaotic. Sunlight Emperor stood in front of the railing and looked at the battlefield. He first looked at Ancient Desolation, then at Martial Dragon Ape. His expression became strange and his smile was extremely cold. "Cardinal Heaven, you belong to me." He mumbled and leaped into the air, heading towards the martial dragon ape. He walked at a steady pace, perhaps waiting for an opportunity. The Chilean Ancient Desolate's performance was very tyrannical. If he were to easily approach, he would definitely be attacked by the Chilean Ancient Desolate. Inside the stone space, Zhou Xuanji and the others were still waiting. Most of the great sovereigns were extremely anxious. Why hasn't Sunlight Emperor let us out yet? Yeah. Now is the best time for us to join the battle. I told you he has ulterior motives. Wait, did you notice? There's an array here. I can't even force my way out. What? We are trapped? Zhou Xuanji couldn't help but frown when he heard the cries of alarm around him. He used his divine will to touch the space and found that there was indeed some kind of power blocking them. What does this guy want? Zhou Xuanji frowned. He suddenly felt a little regretful. Why did I trust Sunlight Emperor so easily? Little Sovereign's voice resounded in his ears. It seems that this guy is also plotting a Cardinal Heaven. He trapped you here. Could it be that he wants to use you as nutrients for the Cardinal Heaven? Zhou Xuanji's frown deepened after hearing this. He can't be so perverted. He looked up and saw that Sunlight Emperor was paying attention to the battle between the Chilean Ancient Desolate. Liang Yu was indeed powerful. The flames on his body made Sunlight Emperor's vision fluctuate. He and Ancient Desolation, Chilean, clashed wildly. All kinds of divine abilities emerged one after another. It was extremely spectacular. No one dared to approach within 100 miles. Ancient Desolation, frowning, said in a deep voice, "I didn't expect you to advance by leaps and bounds." Liang Yu burst into laughter. His laughter was incomparably wild. With a fierce look in his eyes, he said with a cold smile, "Today I will return the humiliation and the blood feud from back then." Boom. The flames on his body soared as he swung his fists. Countless fire dragons soared into the sky, crashed into the ground or circled around. All of them madly rushed toward Ancient Desolation from all directions. The surrounding great sovereigns were all frightened. They had no choice but to pull away from the battlefield. Even Zhou Xuanji and the others inside the stone space could feel the scorching heat. The scorching heat that penetrated through time and space. Liang Yu's fire Dao had reached an incredible level. However, even though he was so powerful, he couldn't suppress Ancient Desolation. With Liang Yu as a foil, Zhou Xuanji could truly understand how powerful Ancient Desolation was. No matter how Liang Yu attacked, the Ancient Desolate Chilean's aura continued to grow. Wisps of blood qi and black qi overflowed from the surface of his body, condensing into a terrifying giant demon above his head. Two Chileans crawled on his shoulders, roaring endlessly. "You want to take revenge with such little strength?" Ancient Desolation laughed mockingly. He waved his right hand and the giant demon above his head flew out like lightning. It swallowed all the fire dragons and took Liang Yu away. Liang Yu was swallowed by the giant demon and was being ravaged by a mysterious corrosive force. "My supreme divine power." Liang Yu's expression changed drastically. His supreme divine power was melting rapidly. If this continued, he would surely lose. On the other side, Sunlight Emperor suddenly sped up and charged toward Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign. "Stop." The Chilean demon flew over and kicked Sunlight Emperor. A gust of black wind swept across and sent Sunlight Emperor flying away. The next second, Sunlight Emperor appeared behind her out of thin air with a cold expression. "Who do you think you are?" Sunlight Emperor slammed his palm on the Chilean demon's back. The Chilean demon immediately exploded and turned into a puff of black smoke. "Kill, kill, kill, kill." Martial Dragon Ape Sovereign roared suddenly. His tone was filled with anger. Everyone, including Sunlight Emperor, spat out blood and was sent flying by a terrible impact before they could even react. Ancient Desolation Chilean also withstood the impact. But he only swayed a little and was not injured. He turned around and said in excitement with a crazed look, "Universe Overlord, you are finally coming back to life. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."